Chapter 731. At the bottom of the cold water, the Purple Knight's spiritual master spoke of his worries about the 10,000-year ancestor. Li Yunxin thought that the demon cultivator who he had a good impression of, was confused because the Tao in his heart was different from what he saw in reality. But now that he thought about it, the Purple Knight's spiritual master was also an old monster who had cultivated for thousands of years. How could he suddenly be shaken because his values were touched? What he wanted to ask was not about the Tao, but about the 10,000-year ancestor. He must have felt that the 10,000-year ancestor was different from the previous person. He immediately remembered the grand feeling when he touched the wolf spine angry lion spear, as well as the subtle emotions. Most of it was anger, which should have come from the ancient demon skeletons that were suppressed in various places. But there was also a little bit that he almost ignored, a little bit of hope. Li Yunxin instinctively linked that little bit with his current situation, and many details that were originally hidden in his memory surfaced. The 10,000-year ancestor. Maybe he had other plans. A former leader of the profound sect, because of a series of changes, fell into trouble in the Wuxia River, and was imprisoned for tens of thousands of years. In these tens of thousands of years, what did he want to do the most? It was freedom. It was the freedom to leave the Wuxia River and walk freely again. He and Li Yunxin talked about many principles and experiences, using this to prove that what he wanted the most was to reinvigorate the profound sect, and not to mention the word freedom. In fact, Li Yunxin should have been aware of this, but the problem was, when he was in contact with the people of the lifeless Immortal sect, the disciples of the 10,000-year ancestor also kept mentioning these four words: reinvigorate the profound sect. The successive hints made him preconceived and gradually formed some kind of inertia. So much so that when he was talking to the 10,000-year ancestor, his thoughts really followed this inertia. Damn it. He was the best at this kind of thing and knew how wonderful the effect of doing this was, but now he fell into someone else's trap. But now because of Xinryu's words he realized. If he used to use the most sinister method to figure out people's minds, why did the 10,000-year ancestor spend tens of thousands of years to refine an ancient demon in the sea cave? He was not the person with the highest cultivation in this world. And over the course of tens of thousands of years, the Celestials had not been isolated from the world. If the ancient devil from the netherworld really came out, how could the celestial beings just sit back and do nothing? Why did he have to go through so much trouble? The 10,000-year ancestor had another goal in mind. The sense of anticipation he felt from the wolf spine angry lion spear. Was it the ancient devils or the 10,000-year-old ancestors or both? Li Yunxin took a deep breath. Divine Lord, are you saying that the 10,000-year-old ancestor refined the skeleton for tens of thousands of years in order to refine a body for himself? He guessed it right on the first try. You are indeed a smart person. Because I've done this kind of thing before. Li Yunxin frowned and sneered. Good. I actually fell for it. It's like hitting a goose and getting pecked in the eyes by the goose. So you're saying that he was afraid that I would ruin his plans, so he sent me in as well? Good. What a great 10,000-year-old ancestor. His face suddenly darkened. I really want to trust someone this time. I'm afraid that you're blinded by love. Since you were born, you deserve to be called a decisive, cold, and calm person. Recently, you've been together with the princess of Dongting. Seems that you've really fallen in love. Li Yunxin, when a person falls in love, he will become weak. Didn't you know this kind of thing before? Xinryu smiled faintly. You've been blinded by the female monster and did some stupid things. I won't blame you for now. Now that you're in the cage, you can think about whether you want to abandon the dark side and enter the light side. This dragon island was originally used to suppress the netherworld aura underground. Since the netherworld aura can't pass through here, you have no way to escape from here. I'll give you some time to think about it. As soon as he finished speaking, Xinryu's figure immediately disappeared. Li Yunxin stood alone in the room for a while. He thought that what Xinryu said was probably true. The 10,000-year-old ancestor and Xinryu knew each other much longer than him, so their cooperation should be longer. But how could he make such a mistake before and believe the old ancestor's words? Xinryu said that he fell in love with Hong Yang, which affected his judgment. Li Yunxin was a little scared. He didn't want to admit that it was true. Because if he did, it means that the rational thinking that he was most proud of was affected. That would be more troublesome than any disease or disaster. But he temporarily calmed down. He knew that Xinryu's appearance also conveyed another good news. This so-called Lord Shinryu really didn't have enough power right now. Otherwise he wouldn't need to trap himself and use this secret room trick. So he began to walk slowly in this hall. He didn't dare to move before because he was afraid of some terrible traps. Now that Shinryu used this as a prison, it meant that it should be safer. Apart from the secret room in Yunshan, this was the first time he had a close contact with the creation of that world. His heart was full of curiosity. A little like a person who traveled to the future, he wanted to see how many miracles there were that exceeded his imagination. He first reached out his hand and carefully touched the wall. Then he felt a comfortable temperature. It was neither cold nor hot. The wall looked slightly rough, but when he touched it, it was unexpectedly smooth. A bold idea popped into Li Yunxin's mind. He exhaled lightly, turned around and faced the wall. When Shinryu appeared again, about a day had passed. The light formed in the room and he saw Li Yunxin facing the wall. He was sitting in a corner of the wall with a pale white spear by his feet. His shoulders were moving slightly. It was obvious that he was fiddling with something. This scene seemed to make Shinryu a little confused. After looking for a while, she said in a low voice, "Li Yunxin, what do you think?" Li Yunxin fiddled with it for a while, then turned around and said, "What? Think about what?" Shinryu frowned, took 2 steps to the side and looked at the thing in front of Li Yunxin. But there was nothing, it was just a white wall. "Forsake the darkness for the light." Shinryu looked at him again and said, "The 10,000-year ancestor refined the ancient demon to replace his body. Even the Rock King is no match for him. In the future the world will be divided into 3 and I will take one. You are no longer the small fry you used to be and there are many eyes on you. It is impossible for you to get along well. Why don't you join me like Koto-kun?" Li Yunxin slowly stood up and picked up his spear. "Then Koto-kun joined you, what now?" As he spoke, he pretended to look behind Shinryu as if there was a living person in front of him, and Koto-kun might be hiding beside her. "That person hates me to death. Now that I am trapped, she doesn't jump out to talk nonsense. Could it be that she joined you and got killed? If that's the case, I don't dare. Why don't I stay here for a few more days?" Shinryu did not say anything. He stared at him for a long time until Li Yunxin spread his hands and said, "You think that there is nothing to be afraid of, just because my strength is not as good as before. You should know that in this world, strength is not necessarily measured by the level of one's realm or the amount of strength. The things I have are far more than you can imagine. I was once a Teisho and I have a way to make you a Teisho without any worries. Now that you asked Koto-kun, maybe you think that she and I are avoiding you and don't dare to see you. I think that she is no match for you now. But what if I say that I have given her the true method, and she will become a Teisho in a few days? When that time comes, it is really not up to you to think." Li Yunxin thought for a while and said, "Oh." Shinryu looked behind him again, shook his head and disappeared again. In the next 10 days Shinryu appeared 3 times. Perhaps it was because she was seen through, but she also knew that Li Yunxin was now trapped, so she did not speak as high and mighty as before, but was much calmer, as if she really wanted to take Li Yunxin under her command. Unfortunately, she had told Li Yunxin that he was played by the 10,000-year ancestor, and Dragon King, who had been traumatized, became a frightened bird, and it was difficult for him to believe any sincere words. But she did not seem to be in a hurry. She had once told Li Yunxin that there were people from the lifeless Immortal sect guarding outside, and it would be difficult for his reinforcements to come here. Even if he summoned the help of the Teisho, it would be impossible to break the seal of this secret room. She had the patience to tell Li Yunxin to stay here for thousands of years. Everyone knew that loneliness was the most terrible punishment. But there was still no response. It was not until the 6th time Shinryu appeared that she found that things were a little different. Li Yunxin was trapped for more than 10 days, but his mental state was excellent. He was not immortal. He did not need to eat or drink and he did not need much sleep. If his spirit could hold up, it would be difficult to be defeated. But right now he seemed to be eating. He inserted his spear into the ground and with his hands behind his back, he walked slowly against the wall as if he was thinking. He was chewing something in his mouth as if he was eating snacks. Shinryu noticed this. She frowned. "What is that in your mouth? Where did it come from?" "Chewing gum." Li Yunxin stopped in her tracks and opened her palm, revealing 2 fingernail-sized lumps of white skin. "Refreshing breath, protecting the teeth and gums. Do you want it?" Shinryu's face became serious. Her eyes began to wander around, but the hall was as clear as day. Other than her illusion, there was only Li Yunxin and his spear. The dome, the walls, and the floor were all clean and there was nothing else. Seems that you have some tricks up your sleeve. She looked away and stared at the two pieces in Li Yunxin's palm for a while. But since you tried it, you should know that this place isolates spiritual energy. You can't use the Dragon Palace to escape and you can't summon anything. She looked at Li Yunxin again and snorted, deliberately mystifying. Li Yunxin laughed. Oh, I did try it. I wanted to find the great sage to save me, but I couldn't contact him. I wanted to escape through the Dragon Palace, but I couldn't get in. I couldn't use the sleeve dimension and I couldn't use the earth escape thaumaturgy. You're right, this place isolates spiritual energy, so it's a good place to imprison people. Then guess where did my chewing gum come from? Shinryu seemed to be relieved. You've always liked to eat and drink. It's just a few snacks that you brought with you and you took them out from your clothes. You want to use such a small trick to... You're so paranoid. Li Yunxin laughed and said, you think I have the thaumaturgy to take things out from the Dragon Palace, and you think this place can't restrict my thaumaturgy. Then it seems like this trick of yours won't work. Shinryu frowned again, thinking that Li Yunxin was really hard to tame. If that's the case, you can continue to stay here. Let me see what other tricks you have. After saying that, her figure disappeared again. Li Yunxin only had time to say, Shinkuan, why do I see that you're starting to feel uneasy? Before the hall went silent. Maybe it was Li Yunxin's behavior that made Shinryu lose her patience. Or maybe Shinryu was really busy with something. After more than 10 days, Shinryu's illusion appeared again. The last time she appeared, she was shocked by the things in Li Yunxin's mouth and hands. This time she almost stared at him as soon as she appeared. The hall used to be pure white. But now it was different. The dome turned bright red, but the light it cast was still warm and white. The walls turned golden as if they were gilded. The floor turned wooden and even had textures. There was a round table in the hall and Li Yunxin was eating. The big round table was filled with food and wine. There was a large crispy roasted suckling pig in the middle. The color was amber and the oil was shiny and still steaming. On the other side there was a row of lively dishes. Sea cucumber stewed with pork tendon, shark fin and crab soup, razor clam soup, mushroom stewed chicken, rabbit fruit milk sticks, fish belly stewed with ham, steamed shad, wensi tofu, pheasant soup, fake grouper liver, foie gras soup, scarlet lips and rice wine. On the other side there were all kinds of fresh and dried fruits and side dishes for hot eating and drinking. Li Yunxin rolled up his sleeves and ate with both hands. His mouth was greasy and it was a mess in front of him. The empty wine jars rolled on the ground, making a ringing sound. Looking further, there were oranges, apples, watermelons, pineapples, durians and fragrant pears piled up by the wall. More hooks appeared on the wall and there was a row of dried chicken, duck, bacon and sausages. Shinryu was stunned by the scene in front of her for a full 3 breaths and then said, You. Li Yunxin put his arm on the table and waved the half-eaten drumstick in his hand and laughed. Let me count the days. Today is the 18th of the 12th lunar month. It will be New Year in a few days. I think if you want to lock me up for a few more days I will be alone, cold. What should I do? But New Year has to pass. I'll buy some New Year's goods first. I won't be lonely. I even rhymed. The expression on Shinryu's face changed rapidly. She no longer looked at Li Yunxin, nor did she look at the food in front of him. Instead she looked at the dome, the wall and the floor. Her eyes became strange when she looked at these things. You. She slowly frowned. You. Where did you come from? She quickly retracted her gaze and looked back and forth at Li Yunxin as if trying to see through him. Where did you come from? How many things did you bring? Li Yunxin smiled and stood up. He casually threw the drumstick on the table and clapped his hands and his face became clean. Then he snapped his fingers and said, Recycle. The empty wine jars on the floor suddenly sank into the ground, and the mess on the table also sank into the ground. The half-eaten food and the tasted food all sank into the ground and disappeared. The untouched wine and dishes were still neatly arranged on the table. It was as if there was an invisible, nimble servant who helped him collect everything. He took out a piece of chewing gum from his sleeve and threw it into his mouth and looked at Shinryu with a sigh. Don't lie to yourself. My clothes, the workmanship is excellent. The 3-dimensional cut perfectly accentuates my tall figure and elegant temperament. Where can I hide things? They all came from this room. Li Yunxin smiled. But it's not your fault. The translucent jade slip was in the hands of the two fake saints of Cloud Mountain for 1,000 years, and they still didn't have a clue. It's just a problem of vision. Your problem is the same. You stayed in this room for 1,000 years and you don't know the real magic of this room. It's also a problem of vision. You see, I came here and then I started to touch the wall. That time you appeared, you even took 2 steps and you saw what I was doing. Do you know what this means? He paused for a moment. But Shinryu's face became extremely ugly and she didn't speak. So he continued, it means first you may not have tried to touch the wall before. Because you don't know that there is such a thing as an interactive physical touchscreen, or a touchscreen for short. This kind of room, extremely simple, cold, futuristic, I think it's possible at first glance. Or maybe you tried it but you don't know how to go further, right? As he spoke, he walked to the wall and stretched out his thumb to draw. A very faint light appeared on the wall, and then an equally faint pattern appeared. In the middle was a solid white bright spot. Around this bright spot there were 8 layers of rings. The rings were very thin like strands of hair. On top of these rings, there were 8 circular light spots of different sizes and slightly different colors. Some were red and some were blue. Some were blue and white and some were khaki. On the largest khaki light spot there seemed to be a red eye. This thing is called a verification pattern, Li Yunqin said as he glanced at Shinryu. He saw the eagerness in Shinryu's eyes, so he laughed. Oh, it seems that you did accidentally draw this verification pattern but you don't know how to do it, right? It's actually very simple. Fill these 8 small light spots one by one into the 8 layers of rings. As he spoke, Li Yunqin pointed at the khaki light spot with the red spot and pulled it down. The light spot followed his fingertips and he pulled it to the 5th layer of the ring. And then the light spot began to move on the ring. He glanced at Shinryu again. The godly monarch was holding his breath as if he didn't have time to say anything, and focused all of his attention on the pattern. He chuckled and casually pulled the remaining 7 light spots down. He pulled the blue and white one to the 1st ring and the red one to the 8th ring. When the 8 light spots began to move, Shinryu's eyes narrowed, and just as he was about to speak, the 8 small light spots suddenly collided with each other as if they were drunk, and finally, the whole pattern turned into a light spot and disappeared. The wall returned to its original state. Shinryu's eyes dimmed. Li Yunqin spread out his hands. See, if you fill in the wrong place you can't break the seal. It seems that the godly monarch has tried it before? Then I guess you don't know what a solar system is. Chapter 732. Secondly, you didn't even notice me coming and going in this room a couple of times. I did try to use a thaumaturgy to escape but I couldn't. That means you're telling the truth. This house is able to isolate spirit energy thaumaturgy. It also means you can't see what I'm doing here. But this house definitely has a monitoring function but you don't know how to use it. Then take a guess, do I know how to use it now? Shinryu looked around. Li Yunqin pretended not to notice her actions, turned around and fiddled with the wall for a while, then moved away. A small window appeared on the wall with a few lines of text. He pointed on it. After you pass the image verification, part of the function will be unlocked. The most basic function, life support. But it's also interesting. I thought that people in the future with super high technology would have more variety of food. But it seems that the dishes aren't too different, just that they're very comprehensive. I think they're all synthetic but I can't tell. That's great. What I'm fiddling with now should be a catering system. Divine Monarch, have you tried coffee? Do you want to try? You can calm yourself down, I feel like you're not in a good state right now. While he was talking, a tray suddenly appeared on the originally smooth wall. There was a small cup on the tray, steam rising from the cup. Li Yunqin took the cup and the tray retracted. He took a sip of the coffee, then looked at Shinryu. So, you think this house is indestructible and can isolate spirit energy, so you want to use it as a cage to lock me in? But this is like a person who got a steel gun, but only thinks that it's very hard and easy to use to smash people. It's really a waste. Divine Monarch, if you lock me up here for a few more days, your Dragon Island might become mine. Are you afraid? Shinryu didn't say anything, only stared at him as if trying to see how many secrets he had in his head, and what kind of things he could do. Li Yunqin wasn't in a hurry. He slowly walked around the living room with a cup of coffee in his hand, as if he was taking a stroll. After a while he waved at the ground and muttered something. A sofa suddenly appeared on the ground. The leather of the sofa creaked as he sat down. Li Yunqin sighed contentedly. When it comes to enjoyment, no one knows it better than the people of the future. Let's talk about this. Although there are many Dao techniques and demon techniques, they are all in the hands of a few people. As for these people, their thinking couldn't break away from the limitations of the era, and they weren't very willing to ponder over this. In the end, they were a little lacking. From this, we can see that the demand of the general public is the driving force to improve the quality of life. The true dragon suddenly said, "Perhaps I really don't know about these methods of yours. But how do you know that I didn't let you in because I didn't know, and that I wanted to get the method to control these things from you?" "I don't care." Li Yunxin smiled. The gap between our knowledge reserves can no longer be described as a generational difference. You need to memorize a lot of things that I think are common sense. But even if he did, it would only be a small detail in a series of operations. He wouldn't be able to remember it all. For example, he raised his hand again and the floor lit up. In front of him, three-dimensional images formed by thin lines of light appeared in the air. There were 8 of them. 4 of them were lifelike images. One of them was a majestic palace. It was the architectural style of the Midland. One of them was a greenish-gray figure. It was a woman. She wore a bright crown on her head, and held a torch in one hand and a book in the other. One of them was a half-length statue. It had a long head, a huge nose and deep eyes. The style was quite rough. There was a huge statue of a fist holding a broken sword in its hand. There were also 4 irregular patterns that looked like maps. This image, after passing it, can unlock some other functions. But among these 8 images I only know 3. I don't know the palace, the hand holding the broken sword, and 3 of the maps. But I can try. The Statue of Liberty corresponds to the United States, Li Yunxin said as he matched the 2 images. There is also a stone statue of Easter Island. I don't know what Easter Island looks like, so I put it aside for now. The style of the palace is Chinese, but I can't find the rooster map of China in the 4 maps. So I guess in the other world, the country with Chinese civilization inheritance is different from the one on my side. But it doesn't matter, I looked carefully and found the coastline of East Asia in this map, so it corresponds to the original world of China, super large. The other 2 are easy to deal with. The stone statue of Easter Island is on the island, so of these 2 maps, one has a relatively flat edge and the other is fragmented with a few islands. It means that one is bigger and the other is smaller, so the stone statue of Easter Island should correspond to the smaller one. As he spoke, he put the remaining 2 images back in place. The successfully matched images emitted a soft light and slowly faded away. You see, there are some things I don't know, but I can infer based on the common sense I know. But you don't even have this common sense, and if you try by luck, the 4 beautiful buildings correspond to 4 maps. The probability of getting it right is not very good. But this is also only opening up some unimportant permissions. But even at this step, there are some things that even I don't know and I have to guess. In the future, when it comes to more core functions, the common sense needed should be even more difficult than this. The people in their world may not be strenuous, but they are not friendly to me. But I can still guess and try my luck. What about you, Divine Kuan? Li Yunxin smiled and raised his cup to her. So knowledge is power. Shinryu carefully watched the process of Li Yunxin's operation. While listening to him, she occasionally frowned and thought, as if she was considering whether what he said was true, or whether he was lying to her. But in the end she realized that Li Yunxin did not hide anything, and what he said was consistent with what he did. So after a while she shook her head. It seems that there is no shortcut to become proficient in these methods of unlocking traps, and it can't be done in one go. Even if you have the information, it is difficult to learn it purposefully, Li Yunxin said. The person or team who designed these verification patterns is very tricky. You can memorize some of the information. But there are some unlocking methods that don't need the exact information, but the values and thinking of the person who unlocked it. If you didn't grow up in a certain world and environment, it will be impossible to deal with it. Because there are many things that even the person who unlocked it may not have thought about. There is such a difference here. Li Yunxin's tone changed. He became more sincere. Shinryu noticed this change and her expression relaxed a little. What are you trying to say? Li Yunxin put his cup on the sofa's armrest, stood up and slowly walked to the opposite side of Shinryu. The 2 of them were only 2 steps apart and probably no one in this world was able to talk to Shinryu at such a distance. I'm very happy now. I can talk to the big shots face to face and negotiate with them, he said calmly. I don't want much, he said calmly. I said that knowledge is power and information is power. so I only want information. You promised me the realm of Taisho. Let's not talk about whether what you said is true or not. Just from what I see, I am not tempted by your proposal. If I want to be a Taisho, I can make myself a Taisho and I don't need to trouble others. What I want is not the position of a true dragon or something else that people in your world think is powerful, but to me it's just like chicken ribs. I want information. I want to know what you remember from the beginning of your memory, such as something related to the painting Saint Qianzhao and related things in the netherworld. Xinryu did not say anything. He seemed to be thinking about whether what Li Yunxin said was true or not. He waited patiently for a while and suddenly said, "Do you feel relieved now?" "What?" Li Yunxin smiled. "I heard that you have been in a deep sleep for 1,000 years. But now I know that it is because your strength has been greatly reduced, and you have to use mystery to maintain people's respect for you. You must have had a hard time in the past 1,000 years. Even when you appeared recently, you hid your head and showed your tail, only letting people see bits and pieces of you. But now that the matter had been laid out, there was a sense of relief, as though a broken jar had been lifted from its burdens. Does it feel good to remove the mask and disguise?" Xinryu was silent for a while and then smiled mysteriously. Being too smart may not be a good thing. He thought that she would say something else. But right after she said this, Xinryu's figure suddenly disappeared. She had left. This caused Li Yunxin to be a little surprised. However, this was within reason. Even if he pointed out the true dragon's weak point, since the other party could stay on this dragon island for 1,000 years without any worries, then it would have the patience to wait a few more days, observe for a few more days, and weigh the pros and cons for a few more days. So he smiled, walked to the wall and began to point at it. Just like that, 3 days passed. According to the human world's calendar, it should be the 21st of the 12th lunar month. Li Yunxin ate and drank to her heart's content for another 3 days. She made some interesting little things. But there weren't many that were useful. Making these things wasn't as easy as he told Xinryu. Since this hall was the entrance to the netherworld for Dragon Island, and it could cooperate with the Cloud Mountain to send messages outside of the solar system, it meant that in Xiaxing's world, it should be a relatively advanced technology. At first, Li Yunxin felt that the control system of this hall was very humane. The various unlocking methods were also very interesting. But after understanding a little more, he realized that this system was actually very large and complicated. Some of the more basic things, such as the unlocking method of the life support system, were mostly common sense. It could basically guarantee that a person with a certain degree of education would be able to survive in this room. Considering that the technology level in Xiaxing's world was higher, Li Yunxin's standard of having a certain degree of education might be the standard of a preschool child in that world. But when he went deeper and touched on some core functions, the common sense and thought patterns he told Xinryu weren't very useful anymore. Some professional content began to appear. A small portion of it could be found in Li Yunxin's world. He had no clue about the other half. He couldn't even find a clue to reason about it. He realized that he had also been limited in the past. He only asked Xiaxing some questions that he could think of, but Xiaxing should know more professional knowledge. After all, he was sent to this world after being trained. Qianzhao should be like Xiaxing. When he thought of this, a subtle emotion surfaced in his heart again. It was like a layer of mud that had gradually sunk into the water had surfaced again. He had read Qianzhao's diary before and realized that Qianzhao seemed to be just like that, which greatly reduced his sense of mystery and anticipation towards her. But now he knew that there were other areas, and that what she knew might be far beyond what he could understand. He had always laughed at those who would involuntarily worship and fear in front of the strong. But now there were waves in his heart again. Did this also mean that he couldn't get rid of some deep-rooted bad habits? Damn it. In his previous life he had never had such troubles. But in this life, when he felt that he was becoming more and more like a human, he also seemed to have many troubles that humans had. He didn't know whether it was good or bad. He made up his mind to drag Xiaxing out again after he escaped from this cage. This time he had to make sure that Xiaxing's mind didn't collapse again and get some information from him. He had a premonition that Xiaxing wouldn't be in his hands for much longer. He had attracted too many people's attention and controlled too many resources. The saying that the bird that poked its head out might not be true, but it wasn't far from it. Some forces wouldn't allow him to have too many things for too long. Li Yunxin made a clock in the hall. It floated in the air, glittering like a crystal, ticking, ticking, ticking. Finally, the hall was filled with some noise, making it less lonely. When the clock reached 9 o'clock in the evening, a bit of light appeared in the hall again. At this time, Li Yunqing was sitting on the sofa and drinking coke. There were some lights floating in the air in front of him. The scene was explosive. Mechanical vehicles exploded in the air, and heavy infantry took turns advancing on the surface of an unfamiliar planet. A likable villain was anxiously stomping his feet in a helicarrier. A beautiful Federation female spy was stealing classified information from the big bed in the bedroom. This was a completely different look from the movies and TV shows of his era. As long as he had enough energy, he could see countless details at the same time. Sometimes he even felt like he was in a trance. Everything he had experienced in this world was just a dream. Now he was in the real world, in a civilized world where he didn't have to worry about his life and future. At this time, a dot of light appeared. But this time it wasn't Shinryu. The human figure formed by the light was Zither Kuan. Before he could see Zither Kuan's appearance clearly, he heard a pitiful voice. Li Yunqing, save me. Chapter 733. As soon as she finished speaking, Guqin's phantom appeared in front of him. Li Yunqing was stunned for a moment. That was because of Guqin's current appearance. From her tone, it seemed that she had suffered some kind of inhuman torture. She should be covered in wounds, disheveled hair and dirty face. Otherwise she should be pale and haggard. But on the contrary, she looked extremely imposing now. It was as if a fiend god had appeared. But different from Li Yunqing and Hatred's demon god body, she looked much more beautiful. She was not wearing clothes, but her body was covered in fine golden scales. Her scale armor was different from Li Yunqing's god-fiend body, which was mighty and ferocious. Instead, it accentuated her beautiful figure, as if it was a tight-fitting garment inlaid with sequins. Her hair turned snow-white and reached her feet. Li Yunqing could not see her back, but he guessed that the hair would extend all the way to her spine. There was a pair of brilliant horns on his head, and there were specks of gold hovering around him. His entire body was bathed in a golden mist that was as dense as water vapor. It was like a dream. But her posture was not right. She was standing with her hands and feet together as if she was being punished. When he looked at her face, her expression matched her words. For the first time, Guqin showed a frightened expression in front of Li Yunqing. She stared at him. Save me. Li Yunqing put the cup on the armrest and looked at her suspiciously. What is Guqin doing? Shinryu wants to refine me. She was still motionless as she spoke. Li Yunqing realized that if her current performance was not fake, then it meant that she was bound by some kind of power. This was interesting. There was actually someone who could immobilize Dragon Sun who was at the peak of the profound realm, and even when he used his demon god body he could not free himself. But her demon god body looked a little familiar. As soon as this thought appeared, Li Yunqing's mind lit up. Yes. When he met Shinryu for the first time in Mount Lord Dongting's crepe palace, she sat majestically in the hall. At that time she was dressed in a gorgeous robe, but her appearance and the corners of her eyes were very similar to the Zither lady in front of her. He had a plan in mind. So he leaned back on the sofa and laughed. We are brothers and sisters after all. Earlier little Nine was swallowed by second brother. In the middle of the night he begged me to save him, saying that second brother wanted to refine him. And now you've been swallowed by Shinryu again? That can't be. Shinryu is even afraid of me now, so how could they possibly deal with you? I say, are you Zither monarch or not? I hope that the divine monarch didn't disguise himself as the Zither monarch to scare me in order to lure me out. If he really did that, he would really be lowering himself to the ground. Zither June seemed to be struggling to speak. Her eyes widened. It's me. I know about the Li Emperor. She gritted her teeth and said, I was tricked by Shinryu. Li Yunqing tilted his head and looked at her. The Li Emperor. Fine. If I know this, I will believe that you are Zither lady. So you are really in trouble? It seems like you don't have much time, so just say it. I will listen to you and see if I need help. After saying this, he lifted the cup again and looked away from Zither lady. When Zither lady's illusion appeared, the scene of war in the hall instantly froze and the sound disappeared. But now his eyes returned to the images and the images continued to move. For a moment the sound of guns and cannons were deafening. These were scenes that Zither lady had never seen before. But right now she couldn't care about anything else. She couldn't even care about Li Yunqing's nonchalant attitude. Like a drowning person trying to grab onto a life-saving straw, she said, Shinryu told me that our relationship is different from the other 8. She also promised me many benefits. Those people from the lifeless immortal sect also revealed some information to me. They said that Shinryu's strength is not what it used to be, so I really came to Dragon Island to find her. But I didn't expect to be controlled by her. Now she wants to refine me into a puppet. She said that she wants to merge with me and return to Taishang. Li Yunxin finally looked away from the images, and the hall became quiet again. Wait, being concise doesn't mean avoiding the important and dwelling on the trivial, big sister. Shinryu said that your relationship with her is different. What's the difference? You're being controlled by her, how? She wants to refine you, how? She wants to merge with you. Will your consciousness be erased, or will the two of you be mixed together? If you don't explain this clearly, how can I help you? I don't have much time. I have plenty of time. And I'm not the one who's going to die. Li Yunxin sneered. Saving little Jiu doesn't mean that I'll save you. I saved him because he saved me. But big sister, you're different. Don't tell me you still think that I'm a good person? If you don't want to say it, then I'll continue to be happy here. I don't care what kind of body you two use to do it. Anger flashed across Harp Kun's face. But now she seemed to have reached the end of the road. She even gave up the last bit of her dignity. She widened her eyes. Fine. She said that the remaining 8 are all dragon souls and demon souls. But I'm not. I'm a dragon soul from head to toe. I never thought that there would be a dragon son like the 8 of you. It's just that when she created me, she realized that there were some problems that even she didn't know about, and thus there were you guys. It's also because of that problem that I stopped at the peak of the profound realm, unable to take that step. She said that now that you and the 10,000-year ancestor were pressuring her, she really had no choice but to help me advance to the Grand Elder. It was her new idea. That's why I believed her. Huh, you can even believe that. Li Yunxin gloated. Oh, but strong negative emotions do have a significant effect on lowering one's intelligence. Alright, continue. I came to the Dragon Island, where you are, and then she brought me to the entrance of the Netherworld. Li Yunxin interrupted her. You're at the entrance of the Netherworld now? It's just a chaotic world. She said that beyond this world is the Netherworld. But there's already some Netherworld aura here. That Netherworld aura is extremely overbearing. When I went there and appeared, I was defenseless. My demon power was rushed by the Netherworld aura and I almost lost my breath. She took advantage of this opportunity to restrain me and then sealed the Netherworld aura in my body. Oh, I understand. The demon power in your body is very strong, but the Netherworld aura is even stronger. It jumped into your body and the two intersected. The situation is very similar to cultivation deviation, and the spiritual power in your body is in disorder. Good idea. What else? How does she refine you? I don't know. Her method is very unique. But from what she said, I guess it was someone from the lifeless immortal sect who taught her this method. Including the 9 dragon kings that she refined her own essence. They should all be taught by someone from the lifeless immortal sect. Li Yunxin's expression finally became serious. He straightened his body and frowned for a while. Listening to what you said, it does sound a little believable. That 10,000-year-old ancestor is refining the demon from the great netherworld. It's reasonable to say that he found this method himself and then taught it to Shinryu. He thought for a while. Is she planning to refine you into her body like how that 10,000-year-old ancestor refined the ancient demon into his own body? Yes, that's right. Qin Kun shouted. Although this is my problem, Shinryu also tricked you to come here. Once I'm refined, the next one will be you. I'm already at the peak of the profound realm and Shinryu used to be the Grand Elder. Once she succeeds, Li Yunxin, your good days will come to an end. Li Yunxin stood up and waved his hand. The image in the hall disappeared. He frowned slightly, paced 2 steps and said, Tell me about it. What does the entrance to the netherworld look like and how big is it? How can you appear here to ask for help now? I don't know how big it is. It's surrounded by chaos and there's only a small piece of land about the size of a house. But I guess it's not small. I also guess that Shinryu stayed here for a long time and slowly adapted to the netherworld energy. Because the spiritual power she used to refine me was the power of the netherworld. She leaves here every few days to go to the surrounding void, I guess. It should be like on the ground where cultivators collect the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, to collect the netherworld energy. It's not difficult to appear here. There's a mirror on the ground and I used that mirror to show myself. I thought of a way when she wasn't paying attention. But after waiting for so many days, I was sure that she was really far away, and didn't know the situation here, so I took the risk. I don't have much time and I don't know if there will be a next time. How long do you think it will take? Li Yunxin looked at her. How long do you think you can hold on? Don't rush me. If what you said is true, I have to plan carefully. If you drag me into this, you'll really be done for. Qin Kuan hesitated for a moment. At most, 10 days. Li Yunxin sighed. 10 days? Isn't it going to be the new year? Qin Kuan was stunned. It seemed that the word, new year, was very strange to her. But it should be strange. In thousands of years, who would have the time to celebrate New Year, every year? Li Yunxin sighed again. Let me think about it. I don't have much time. Qin Kuan only finished her sentence. She's here. Then her figure quickly disappeared. The hall returned to silence. Li Yunxin walked back to the sofa, picked up the cup and took a sip and found that his breath had dissipated. So he threw it on the ground. The cup and the water were quickly absorbed and the floor became clean. He began to think about something. But it wasn't about Qin Kuan, but about the information implied in her words. If it was true. In the past he only knew that the so-called celestials were not people of this world. But he had no idea what they or Xianxia could do. But now that he was in this room and had studied it for many days, he had a general idea. He had unraveled some of the basic functions of this hall. The people who were aware of that world must have an unbelievably high level of technology. One must know that this house in the Cloud Mountain should have appeared 40,000 years ago. At that time, with such a high level of technology, it was hard to imagine what they couldn't handle. The people in his world often worried about certain things, such as the exhaustion of resources and food shortage, or the Earth being hit by an asteroid. That would mean a calamity of destruction. But here, what couldn't the people with such a high level of technology solve? Those who knew the inside story, Grandmaster Di Xiaxing and Li Chunfeng, always talked about the destruction of this world. But what did the destruction of this world have to do with them? Wouldn't it be better if they just left? Even the people in his world had the audacity to think that they could collect resources in space and synthesize food and consumables to meet the needs of long-distance travel. But here in this world, these fantasies had become reality. Why would they be afraid of the destruction of the world? There was a possibility, based on his thinking, that they lacked something crucial so they couldn't leave. He felt that it was very likely that it was fuel. Based on this assumption, he thought, there were many huge pipes inside the Cloud Mountain. There were various types of landforms, vegetation and ecological environments in the pipes. There were also some rare or common species. Could these be seen as a closed ecosphere, or like the animals on the ark that were going to be taken away? If the Cloud Mountain was a huge aircraft, then it could be explained that the descending celestials were hiding in the Cloud Mountain. Were they planning to use the Cloud Mountain to leave this world? 40,000 years ago, the Cloud Mountain, Dragon Island, Penglai, Yingzhou, and Fenghu formed a communication system and sent a message to the edge of the solar system. Was it a request for help? Were Qin Zhao and Xiexing the messengers sent by the world that had received the distress signal? But Qin Zhao's diary revealed a certain tendency. She had originally come to this world with ambition, planning to solve the problem. But after seeing what the descenders on the Cloud Mountain did, she was quickly disappointed and dissatisfied with them. In the end, she became hostile toward them. Could this explain the attitude of the elders on the Cloud Mountain towards Xiexing and her former self? The rescuers sent by that world should have been important people that they were eager to get. But the elders' attitude was cold and indifferent, as if they were saying, "Since you came to us, we'll take you. Otherwise, we wouldn't have spent so much effort to find you." Was it because of Qin Zhao's mistake that they had developed a sense of rejection? But people in desperate situations, like the Zither lady, had no right to reject or complain. They would seize every opportunity. And with the elders' attitude, did it mean that they thought there was a way to leave this world that was about to encounter a great calamity without relying on the help of that world? Then there was another problem. With the aloof attitude of the people from that world, and the personality that Qin Zhao showed after becoming the art saint, they didn't seem to be the kind of people who were overflowing with sympathy. Could it be that Qin Zhao had a grudge because of the cruel attitude of the celestials toward the ancients of this world? It should be something else that made her feel disgusted. This something else might also be related to the netherworld. The important figures all turned their eyes to the netherworld. Even the two celestials who seemed to be the first in the history had gone to the netherworld. The answer to the mystery should also be there. The conflicts between different forces in Midland should only be the external manifestation of the great event that was happening in the netherworld. What he should do now was not to spend too much time thinking about Midland. Instead, he should settle the things in the netherworld. Then all the doubts would be easily solved. Chapter 734. Li Yunxin sat down at the table and lightly slapped his forehead. Now that things have developed to this point, even with his high IQ, he felt like he was about to lose track of everything. In recent days, he would sometimes wish that this hall could turn into a small spaceship and take him away from these headaches. Staying in the deep space all alone, good. Because of this thought, a bolt of lightning suddenly flashed through his mind. He froze for a moment, then laughed and said to himself, "So that's what happened." His body and expression relaxed at the same time, as if a lot of troubles had been dispelled because of this thought. So now he began to think about Gukuen's appearance. In fact, this matter was quite simple. All he had to do was look at it from two different angles. Shinryu must have been frightened by what he said before. So she began to regret leaving Li Yunxin in this hall. She hoped that he would leave as soon as possible. So whether or not she discovered that Gukuen was secretly communicating with him, she wouldn't stop it and would even be happy to see it happen. So whether or not Gukuen's words were true or false was meaningless. Man said that he wasn't completely sure that Gukuen's words were true. Even if there was a way to prove it, it was still possible that Shinryu was using her to set up a trap. But because of an idea that flashed through his mind, he felt that he had a way to deal with this dilemma. The next thing he needed to do was to get more information. Li Yunxin stretched his arm and casually tapped on the table. Information appeared everywhere. He picked a few dishes that he had never heard of before. When they appeared on the table, he pushed them to the side. He ate them bite by bite, and at the same time he used his fingertips to draw on the table. Compared to the past few days where he was almost casual and did whatever he wanted, now he was obviously going straight for a certain goal. This goal would be very difficult to achieve. From time to time he would stop to think or sigh. After spending almost 6 hours, he didn't get up or look up. Obviously his progress was very slow. Another 8 hours passed and a visitor interrupted his work. This time it was Shinryu. His gaze was gloomy. He didn't say anything after he appeared. Instead he stared at Li Yunxin for a long time. She knew that the longer the person in front of her pointed, the more secrets he would know and the more advantages he would gain. Previously, when he was doing these things, he didn't seem to be using much effort. But now it was as if he had encountered a huge problem. His brows furrowed into a deep crease. But this also meant that he was currently trying to undo an extremely important seal. Such a seal was really broken. Who knew how big of a wave he would cause? At this time Li Yunxin spoke. He did not raise his head. He was still deep in thought. It was as if Shinryu was already an old friend, and there was no need for him to stand up and greet him formally. Just the first sentence was enough to betray a person without hesitation. "Did you know that Zither lady was here just now?" Shinryu was taken aback. "What?" Li Yunxin raised his hand. He seemed to be hinting for her to wait, as he had just thought of a crucial point in the problem. Shinryu looked at him with an uncertain expression. In the end she didn't say anything. After about 3 breaths of time, he heavily tapped the table, let out a long sigh and raised his head. It was as if he had finally overcome a barrier and taken a small step forward. "I said Zither lady was here just now." He took a sip from the cup beside him, leaned back on the chair and looked at Shinryu. "She told me that you wanted to refine her and asked me to save her. She also told me that the method you used to refine her was taught by the 10 millennia ancestor. I felt that she was telling the truth. Is there really such a thing?" Shinryu's expression turned cold. "Is what you said true?" "Then it seems to be true." Li Yunxin smiled. "I wasn't sure if she was really asking for help, or if you deliberately let her ask for help to lure me out of this room. But it seems that you really don't know. I say, how does it feel to absorb netherworld chi into your body to cultivate? I heard from the 10 millennia ancestor that netherworld chi is extremely overbearing. Since you're cultivating netherworld chi, why are you still so weak?" The few words that Li Yunxin threw at Shinryu seemed to have distracted her. For a moment, countless thoughts flashed through her mind. For example, why did he betray Qingjun? What else did Qingjun? What else did Qingjun? Did her refining method fail? What was Li Yunxin's plan when she found out about this? Even the dialogue between them was not part of his plan. With so many thoughts, she subconsciously frowned. She had to use a tough tone to hide the anxiety in her heart. When you go to the netherworld, you'll know what I'm like in a place with abundant netherworld qi. However, Li Yunxin seemed to want to quarrel with her. He immediately laughed, and his smile was full of mockery. As far as I know, the place where you stay is just the entrance to the netherworld. The netherworld qi should be very weak. If we really go to the netherworld, I'm afraid that both of us will die. Without waiting for Shinryu to refute, he waved his hand again. Ha, it's just a joke. I guess it's because you've been cultivating netherworld qi for a long time. When you go to a place with only spiritual energy in the mortal world, your strength will be greatly reduced. But at that time, I messed up the qi of heaven and earth so that those cultivators couldn't use spiritual energy and could only use the spiritual energy in their bodies. They also became much weaker. No wonder you don't dare to come out of the Dragon Island. As he said these words, the smile on his face suddenly froze. After about a breath's time, he suddenly frowned. Could it be? He stared at Shinryu. You're planning to learn a method from me to open the entrance to the netherworld, and let the netherworld qi flow out and fill this world. Shinryu stared at him, not saying a word. The shock on Li Yunxin's face was not fake. It was not until he reached this point that he thought of this and conveniently resolved the two unresolved doubts in his mind. All along, everyone he met had a very clear goal, even if they couldn't say it clearly. But he still couldn't figure out the goal of two people. The first was the 10-millennium-old ancestor. He said that he wanted to promote the righteous path, and that he refined the elder demon's body to prevent it from causing trouble. The second was Shinryu. Shinryu didn't even have a reason like the 10-millennium-old ancestor. They were just fighting for the sake of fighting. Now he suddenly realized, what if the two of them really formed an alliance to open the entrance to the netherworld and let the netherworld qi fill the land? Shinryu cultivated netherworld qi and was like a fish in water. The 10-millennium-old ancestor possessed the elder demon's body, and his strength increased greatly. But the others would be greatly weakened. When these two fellows joined hands to do such a thing, they were natural allies who could help each other and benefit from each other's needs. He looked at Shinryu's expression again and realized that his deduction was very likely true. The godly monarch's expression became calm, and the haze of being suppressed by Li Yunxin in terms of intelligence and information was swept away. I didn't expect you to only think of this today. Shinryu said slowly, I thought you already guessed it but just didn't want to talk about it. You're right. The netherworld qi is very overbearing, but a small amount of netherworld qi entering the body is not unbearable. This process was gradual, and the transformation from spiritual qi to netherworld qi would be completed in the body. Once the entrance to the netherworld is opened, the netherworld qi will mix with the spiritual qi of heaven and earth, and I will be able to cultivate in such an environment. Maybe there will be many people who will adapt to such an environment. But at that time I will be the top existence in the world again. So you first asked the demons on the land to fight each other, and then eliminated the sea demons. Is it because the fewer these existences, the fewer possible opponents you will have in the future? Li Yunxin shook his head and looked at her. So this is the purpose. Oh my god. I thought that you or someone else had to have some more brilliant pursuits. But it turned out to be the old-fashioned reason of, I want to become stronger so I want to kill all the heroes in the world? Isn't this reason enough? Shinryu looked at him coldly. If it wasn't because of the disaster and my strength is not as good as before, why would I hide for 1,000 years and live in fear? Li Yunxin spread his hands and sighed. Okay, it's just that your vision. Forget it. It's my vision that is too high. We are in different circles, huh? Let's not talk about this. How do you plan to deal with Kitoko? You should worry about how I will deal with you in the future. Shinryu said gloomily. But now that you sold her, what do you want from me? Li Yunxin smiled. Nothing. I'm just curious. I know Kitoko is hard to deal with, but now that I found out that she is going to be refined by you, I naturally have to verify if it is really good to satisfy my gossipy soul. This kind of love-hate thing is not common. I can only say that she misjudged me. If I really saved her, I'm afraid the first thing she will do is to kill me. How could I be so stupid? You're just curious? Shinryu smiled coldly. Then she entrusted the wrong person. She didn't know that a person like you can't be moved with just a few words. Or she didn't catch your sore spot. You're really a cold person, but you do have 2 or 3 weaknesses. She put her hands behind her back and paced around the room, regaining her previous calm demeanor. You didn't catch Kitoko, but I didn't. Li Yunxin, do you know after you came to my Dragon Island 10 days ago, the lifeless Immortal sect has already released the news. They said that you are in prison and your life is in danger. Li Yunxin was silent for a moment. They aren't that stupid. Others might not understand who he was talking about, but Shinryu's thoughts were clear. She smiled. But before you came here, you formed an alliance with the lifeless Immortal sect. Emperor Li is the witness for that. The news that the lifeless Immortal sect said that you are in trouble may not be credible, but Emperor Li was very anxious when he heard about it. Lu Gongzan and little Zhou Xian know that you and Emperor Li can be counted as friends. Do you think they will believe it? Li Yunxin said stiffly, they won't. I heard that Lu Gongzan has received your teachings and recently caused a lot of trouble on the mainland. He is in the limelight for a while. But he is not you. Or should I say he is not as heartless as you. Shinryu said happily, I have already received the news. Lu Gongzan is coming to the sea. Little Zhou Xian is also coming to the sea. There is one more that you might not have thought of. Guess who it is? Li Yunxin was silent for a moment. Bai Yunxin. I have disappointed you. Shinryu shook her head. It is Li Chunfeng. From the looks of it, you can be counted as having a few life and death friends. You are cold and heartless, but to be able to have a few friends like this, I know it is not easy. Hong Yang was originally by your side, but later she hid her tracks. I guess it was you who sent her to inform those old friends, telling them that if they hear any news they should not act rashly. But unfortunately you missed one thing. You let Hong Yang think that you have feelings for her so that she can work for you wholeheartedly. This method is very good. But how could she not know that it is precisely because she has feelings for you, that after knowing that you are in danger she lost her mind and instead did not do her job well? She had just arrived on the mainland when she heard about you. She also returned. In this way, apart from Li Chunfeng, those who came are all people with dragon souls. If I refine them, my power should increase. Shinryu looked at Li Yunxin happily. I heard this news today, so I specially came to tell you. Right now there are not many choices in front of you. You can hide in this hall and not come out. But after I refine Zitherkuan and return to the Taishang, I will capture those who came to help you one by one. After I refine them, I will come back to this hall to find you. At that time you won't be able to escape even if you want to. Or there is another choice. I will tell you how to leave this dragon island. You immediately run out. I will not chase you. Then you can tell those old friends of yours to quickly escape. Similarly, after I refine Zitherkuan, I will come out to capture you one by one. If you choose this path, at least you will have some time to breathe. Maybe you can even keep your life. Li Yunxin looked at her. His tone was indiscernible. In the end, you still want to force me to leave this house. You took the wrong step earlier and now you have to do so many things to make up for it. If that's the case, why would I let you do what you want? I am not an idiot. You have nothing to fear if I leave this place. If you don't chase me, the people from the lifeless Immortal sect will not let me go. If that 10 millennia ancestor really refined the ancient demon, wouldn't I be in big trouble again? He laughed coldly. I will stay here. The more you want me to leave, the more it shows that you are afraid of this place. Zitherkuan said that you still have 10 days to refine her. Let's see who is faster. How about it? I believe that there is something in this house that can deal with you. Shinryu looked at him. Then you are giving up on their lives. You must know, no matter what the result of the battle between you and me is, once they come, they will not be able to leave. 10 millennia ancestor will capture them for me. These friends who have been through life and death with you, now that they have come and died because of you, don't you feel guilty? Li Yunxin said seriously. They are all adults, not children. Adults should be responsible for the decisions they make. Because of their feelings for me, to me, it is called the cost of survival. If everyone in the world can maintain absolute rationality when dealing with everything and never let emotion overcome reason, then this person's benefits in life will be maximized. But in reality, no one can do this. Everyone would inevitably have to pay the price for their emotional impulses. This price and loss is the cost of a person's survival. In other words, it is their lives. Li Yunxin smiled. I can change my own life, but I can't change the lives of others. I have not wronged them and there is nothing to feel guilty about. Chapter 735. Shinryu was taken aback by his words, then laughed coldly. No wonder you are so unscrupulous. So you have such a twisted logic in your heart. Li Yunxin also laughed coldly. I have such a twisted logic in my heart, but it's better than you, Lord Shinryu. You want to open the netherworld for your own benefit, but I'm afraid you don't even want to think about this logic. I'm far from being Lord Shinryu. Shinryu was silent for a while, then shook his head. A person with good luck will always be able to turn danger into safety. For example, a gambler gambles all year round but always manages to win some good things. He uses these good things to exchange for food and clothing and lives on year after year. However, the gambler should also know that even if he had such amazing luck, it would not last long. There would come a day when he would run out and he would lose. When that time comes, what will he do? You're like the gambler. You have always been able to turn misfortunes into blessings all the way until now. But you are not as good as the gambler because you don't seem to have any self-awareness and think that you will always win. At this point, both of them were no longer anxious. Li Yunxin was interested in Shinryu's words, and tilted his head slightly. Lord Shinryu, you are wrong. If the gambler is self-aware and is willing to stop, there will always be a way out. Whether it is chopping wood or selling goods, there will be a way to make a living. But do I have a way out now? If I leave this house, you will have to find me after refining the zither kun. If I don't leave this house, you will also say that you will come in and fight with me. Lord Shinryu, please tell me, what should I choose? Shinryu frowned as if he was a little angry. Why are you so muddle-headed now? You have a rare treasure on you and you have the help of the Grand Elder. If you really want to leave this house, how can the Grand Elder stop you? Li Yunxin suddenly laughed out loud. When he was arguing with Shinryu, his tone was serious and his expression was serious. He pointed at Shinryu and laughed so hard that his fingertips were trembling. Look, you were the one who threatened me first, saying that no matter if I stayed here or left, I wouldn't end up well. I was scared, so I decided not to leave. But when you heard me say that, you panicked again and told me about the benefits of me running away now. You were just short of telling me, maybe the road ahead will suddenly be clear. It was clear that you were really afraid of me. Afraid of me, angry with me. You want to take advantage of me verbally, but you regret it in the blink of an eye. Tell me, aren't you amusing? Perhaps Shinryu's thoughts were mercilessly exposed by him. His face immediately became stagnant, like a pool of stagnant water. She stopped trying to persuade him. He only looked at Li Yunxin darkly. You're not leaving. Let's see who's faster, you or me. After saying this, her figure immediately disappeared. Li Yunxin smiled and lowered his head again to study the things on the table. He wasn't sure if his research progress would be smooth, but he knew that Shinryu's progress would have some twists and turns. Everything in the world had some similarities, and Shinryu refining a living zither kun was no exception. Whether the person being refined cooperated or not would greatly affect the progress. Now that she knew that zither kun was restless, she would probably have to spend a lot of time to solve the problem of the person being refined. Zither kun probably didn't think that she would be sold out so easily. But Li Yunxin had no choice but to do so. In order to put his idea into practice, he had to first figure out what had happened to the true dragon. If he sold zither kun, Shinryu would be shocked. Since she was shocked, her vigilance would be greatly reduced. In fact, Li Yunxin knew that she was training in netherworld qi. He also knew that she hadn't mastered it yet and was still in the stage of slowly adapting. In the space where she and zither kun stayed, the netherworld qi was thin, and only in such an environment could Shinryu be the powerful Shinryu. She wanted to expand her advantage, so she didn't hesitate to open the entrance to the netherworld. He let these thoughts swirl in his head so that he wouldn't think about the other things that Shinryu said. Those people who were coming. Old Lu wasn't someone who didn't know him well. The two of them had been through many things together, so he should have enough confidence in himself. If in the past he might have done all kinds of unwise things because of his own strength and vision, but now that he had the body of Dragon Sun and experienced so many dangers in Midland, he should know what the former Li Yunxin could do, and what the current Li Yunxin could do. He wouldn't be a hindrance, would he? It had been almost 2 months since Li Yunxin left East Sea. 2 months ago, East Sea was still a peaceful and prosperous country. But now it was already in a state of chaos and chaos. It wasn't because the Freemasons within the borders were causing trouble, nor was it because the demons were no longer restrained. It was because the remaining troops in the northeast had gone south. Ever since the Battle of Cloud Mountain and the chaos of the Reiki of Heaven and Earth, the world had fallen into chaos. The remaining demons frequently wreaked havoc in the world, but there was no Daotong or Kenzo to restrain them. There were even some ghost cultivators who occupied land and wanted to create a ghost kingdom in the human world. The desires and ambitions that had been suppressed for tens of thousands of years erupted at the same time, and the Midland immediately became a pot of porridge. In a moment, countless emperors, kings, marshals, and generals rose up together. Millions, tens of millions of people fought and killed. Among the many feudal vassals, the Yu Kingdom's righteous army could be considered a unique one. Before the world fell into chaos, Prince Rong Ingjuran had already taken over half of Yu Kingdom and even a small piece of Qing Kingdom's land. Regardless of whether it was Emperor Yu or the Qing Emperor, neither of them took this matter to heart. The world had its own orthodox Xian men protecting it. They thought that even if Rong Ni temporarily had the help of a demon, when the immortals of Cloud Mountain descended in a thunderous rage, it would still fall apart. How could they know that the people behind Prince Rong were also the people who had turned the Xian men into a mess? When the world truly fell into chaos, many of the emperors, kings, and generals in the dynasties all became ghost cultivators, and the country fell into chaos. More righteous army or bandit army rose up together, and no one paid attention to Prince Rong Ingjuran. Yu Kingdom was originally a small country. Even if Prince Rong dared to be the first in the world and took over half of the country, it was only the land of a province or a prefecture in those large countries. For example, once the Qing Emperor died, there were 4 factions in the country that attacked. Each faction had hundreds of thousands of soldiers in their hands. One of the generals of the Li Kingdom even claimed to command 3 million soldiers and horses. Prince Rong became a complete and utter small shrimp. But after another 2 months, those feudal vassals that had sprung up like wild grass in spring were mostly dead. Normally the demons lay dormant and humans did not care. The demon kings had divided the Midland into many areas of power. Now that the demon kings had come into being, they were like humans and planned to truly bring all the creatures on the land under their rule. Thus, there were conflicts between demons and humans. For example, the general of the Li Kingdom, who claimed to have 3 million soldiers, first took over 1/3 of the Li Kingdom's territory with a crushing force. Then, immensely pleased with himself, he listened to his advisor's suggestion and planned to find a demon king as a backer and pull in some demon soldiers to help him accomplish some unparalleled emperor. However, he and that half-baked strategist didn't know that the territory he occupied was actually at the border of the 3 great demon kings. Among them, the weakest demon king was usually the happiest. He often did things like massacring villages and cities. That general saw this demon king's brutality and felt that his magic was powerful. Only after sending over a dozen messengers did he strike up a conversation with the demon king. Only after sacrificing the lives of hundreds of boys and girls did he obtain the demon king's promise. However, the demon king had only agreed with empty words and had not done anything, but the other 2 demon kings were already resentful. They thought that this general did not take them seriously, so they rode a demon wind and went straight to the central tent. They first tore apart the weaker demon king and then dug out the general's heart. This general also had some special people with him so they could still fight together. However, in this chaotic world, there were more so-called wise rulers than wild dogs in the mountains, who would really throw their lives away for someone. It was better to scatter like birds and beasts, than choose a tree to nest in. Just like that, the army of 300 scattered in confusion, and a few generals were created. It was also when such things happened one after another that they realized. The idea that all creatures in the world were born as humans and that humans were the rulers of heaven and earth did not seem to be true. People crowded the land, bustling with noise and excitement. They labeled the places where people gathered as towns, and labeled the places where there were no people as the wilderness. But in reality, the wilderness was also very lively. On top of the territory of humans, there was also a layer of demon territory. Now that the world was in chaos, people thought that the chaos was caused by humans, but the demons also wanted a share of the pie. These people had sacrificed so many lives to teach them such a lesson. However, for Prince Rong Ingjuran, who lived in a remote area, he had long known of this understanding. He had originally followed a powerful demon to make his fortune. First, he had the help of Mu Nanju and then the people that Li Yunqin had planted. After the Xian men collapsed, Lu Gongzan went there again and stayed for a few days. He had the body of a dragon in the Xian men realm. Even in this chaotic world, he was a rare existence. With this layer, Rong Jun was even less afraid of demon kings and demon generals. The other feudal vassals fought with humans and demons. He only needed to focus on doing his best. Everywhere he went, the slightly weaker demon kings had to avoid him. In this way, after 2 months, Prince Rong had annexed the entire territory of Yu Kingdom and half of Qin Kingdom. He also led his troops to the southeast and suppressed 17 rebellious kings along the way. When he attacked Donghai Kingdom, the territory was almost twice the size of the former Qin Kingdom. At this time, Prince Rong had 2 million soldiers and horses under his command, and his capital was Rong City. There was a new religion in the kingdom, called the Two Saints religion. The great saint was the Wei River Dragon King, and the two saints were the Tongtian Dragon King. Every time there was a battle, Rong Jun would chant the names of the two saints and ask the two immortals to possess him. Then he would go into battle and fight for his life. He did not know whether the two immortals gave them divine power, but at least such a powerful wish would not be wasted. Now the two saints, the Tongtian Dragon King, appeared in Donghai Kingdom. Chapter 736. Fanguen Mountain stood in the northwest of the capital of Donghai Nation. It had always been the place where the royal family offered sacrifices to the East Peak and the Four Blasphemies. There was a huge rock protruding from the top of the mountain, slanting to the south. It was called the Heavenly Stone. When the monarch of Donghai Nation offered sacrifices to heaven and earth and blasphemed the four gods, he set up an altar here. But now, this important place of national sacrifice had become someone else's. A few days ago, Rong Jun's vanguard of more than 30,000 soldiers captured the Sima Station, an important town in the north of the capital. Following that, the 100,000 soldiers from the Middle Army marched straight in and surrounded the capital of Donghai Nation. They didn't even give the royal family of Donghai a chance to escape to the east. And now, on this heaven-seeking stone, there was a person standing against the wind. He didn't look young anymore. His hair was gray like frost on his temples. His black and white hair were mixed together and combed into a meticulous Daoist bun. There was a 5-thunder golden lotus crown on his bun and a 9 heavens descending cloud sword in it. He looked extraordinary. His eyebrows were long, but the tips of his eyebrows were also pale. This contrasted with the noble aura of the golden crown and made him look more mature. There was a long beard on his lips, cheeks and chin, but it was also black and white. This man looked like a Taoist master in his 40s or 50s. He was indeed wearing a purple ribbon 8 trigrams immortal robe. The robe glowed with mystic light. It was obviously not an ordinary item. Looking to the south, he could vaguely see the huge city wall of Donghai Nation. If the weather was good, he could even see the golden roof of the palace shining in the sunlight like a small sun. But for this Taoist priest, whether the weather was good or bad, it did not hinder him from using his spiritual power. He could clearly see the situation in the capital. He could even see the cold light shining on the weapons in everyone's hands. Rong Jun's army had reached the city wall, and the imperial guards were defending it. In fact, the elite soldiers of Donghai Nation had been defeated by Rong Jun. The tens of thousands of people in the capital were just a motley crew. But the city wall of the capital was the same as the city wall of any nation on Midland. When the foundation was laid and built, the Taoist priests or swordsmen of Xianmen had set up powerful magic arrays. Now they had truly reached an unprecedented level of danger. The spirit design that no one had ever thought would actually be activated had finally been activated. The 8 golden gates of the capital of Donghai Kingdom emitted a dazzling light. The light converged in the sky and formed a huge shield that enveloped the entire city. The power source of this magic formation was the feng shui qi points under the capital city, the dragon qi of the emperor in the city, and the qi of the people in the city. The cultivator who presided over the magic formation gathered these qi in one place and withstood 3 rounds of fierce attacks by Rong Jun. Looking at the current situation, it seemed that the capital of Donghai was impregnable, and it was impossible to take it down. There was another person beside the Daoist priest. It was a general in full armor. With his hand on the sword at his waist, he paced back and forth. After taking 2 or 3 steps, he craned his neck and looked into the distance. But this place was dozens of miles away from where the 2 armies were fighting, and he was immortal, so how could he see it? At most he could only hear some sounds occasionally. But the sound was faint and indistinct, and he could not tell how many times the drum was struck or whether it was the gong. After a while the general became anxious. He suddenly stared at the Daoist priest in front of him as if he wanted to shout something. But then he thought of something, hurriedly took a deep breath and clenched his fists. The words he wanted to say had already come out of his mouth, and his expression had changed. "I say, Saint, I'm not in the formation and I'm really anxious. If you want to do something, just do it yourself. Why do you want me to stay here?" "Saint, The three armies can't be without a commander. If His Majesty knows that I'm not in the formation, and the capital city has not been conquered for a long time, I'm afraid my head will. The Daoist priest turned his head and glanced at him, and the general quickly stopped talking, only frowning. Seeing him like this, the old Taoist smiled and said, "General Zhang, have you forgotten your background? You were originally from the Black Stockade village, and you were an executioner by your Majesty's side. If you want to talk about killing and robbing, maybe you're good at it. But if you want to talk about commanding tens of thousands of troops, that's not what you're good at." The general was obviously not convinced, and he stared again. "I've fought and won. It's because you've gathered many defeated generals who are good at using troops. That's their credit." The Daoist priest smiled. "But you've also contributed. Your credit doesn't lie in attacking the city, but in using those people well. But today's situation is different. The three armies have joined forces to attack the capital, and other than you, the other two are surrendered generals. If you're here, you'll naturally become the commander. Since you've become the commander, you'll naturally ruin things. So it's not like me sitting here and watching the tiger and letting the other two do what they're good at." After receiving such an evaluation, this General Zhang was obviously not convinced. But he was afraid of the identity of the person in front of him, and could only mutter a few words. "Since Saint has spoken, I naturally don't dare to say anything else. But if I'm not here, this city can't be conquered. Saint, look." As he spoke, he pointed forward. "From here you can see the golden light over there. They should have set up a formation. Right now it's already been 8 hours and we can still hear the sound of the golden drum. It's obvious that they haven't taken it down yet. Saint, when we attacked the capital cities of the Qi Kingdom and the Lu Kingdom, the people inside had already escaped, and they didn't have the time to use this kind of formation. But now, our three armies are considered to be alone, and there are still bandits in the Qi Kingdom and the Lu Kingdom. Something happens. This formation is easy to break." The Daoist priest lightly interrupted him and raised his eyes to look into the distance. "It's just a true state and two transcendent state controlling the formation. To break it, it's just a matter of raising a hand." The general was stunned, and then he laughed. "Hee, Saint, I don't believe you. If it's really a matter of raising a hand, why haven't you done anything after watching for so long?" The Daoist priest also laughed. "Fine. I'll break it for you." After saying this, he raised his hand and flicked his thumb and middle finger. There was no strange phenomenon or strange sound in front of him. The wind on the cliff was still howling, and the fog between the valleys was not disturbed. Even the monkeys were still chirping and the birds were still chirping. But after 2 breaths, the golden light in the distance disappeared. After another 3 or 4 breaths, the general behind Lao Dao heard the sound of rolling thunder. But the thunder didn't come from the sky, it came from the ground. The general was shocked, and he widened his eyes to look into the distance, but he still couldn't see anything. He could only ask anxiously, "What's wrong? What's wrong? What's wrong?" The Daoist priest flicked his fingers and walked down from the heaven-seeking stone. "I killed the true state Taoist priest controlling the formation, so the formation was naturally broken. Soon, the northeast and the west gate will be broken, and the capital city will be conquered in a few hours." General Zhang was stunned for a while. Then he shouted, "Saint, if it's so easy for you to break the formation, why didn't you do it earlier? Why did you watch so many people die?" The Daoist priest smiled mysteriously and shook his head. "I acted too early, it may not be a good thing. Now look, many people have died in the past few hours. But they were all killed by humans. If I had acted when we attacked the north, I'm afraid that more people would have died." The general was stunned for a while, and he roughly understood the Daoist priest's words. Both the enemy and our side had powerful people helping them. But these powerful people only acted when they had no other choice. Usually they secretly restrained each other. If there were powerful people fighting for everything, it would eventually turn into a fight between immortals. General Zhang had experienced the might of this great sage's attack. He knew that if these two saints fought in the formation, tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of people would die in just one encounter. He heard the Daoist priest say again, "But I called you here to tell you something else. Listen carefully." His voice became slightly lower. "I'm going to leave for a few days, and I'll leave today. What happened here today is actually like this. I could have easily broken the formation in the capital city. But when I was about to use my divine ability on the heaven-seeking stone, My expression suddenly changed as if I had heard some incredible news. Then my face turned ashen and I lost all of my usual elegance. At this time the Rong army was attacking the city and there were many casualties. You wanted to ask me what happened but you didn't dare to. You could only wait for a long time and then you asked me. So I killed the cultivator who was in charge of the formation in the city and then... The Daoist priest slowed down his voice and looked at General Zhang. I flew away in a daze. When you go back you must tell this to your bodyguards. Ask them if they had done something wrong and offended me, causing me to leave in anger. After that you must strictly order your bodyguards not to tell anyone about this, or else they will be beheaded. Ask one person on the first night and another person on the second night. When the capital city is broken and the situation is stabilized, you must drink more wine at the celebration banquet. After drinking, when you are drunk, mention this to the two surrendered generals, and also tell them not to tell anyone. Do you remember what I said? When Lao Dao said the first few words, General Zhang was still confused and he didn't understand. But after he said a few more words in a low voice, the general's expression slowly became dull. Except for nodding, he didn't do anything else. His eyes also lost focus, looking at somewhere behind Lao Dao, and no one knew what he was looking at. When the last few words were said, General Zhang was like a wooden man and he even forgot to nod. About 3 breaths later he sucked in a breath of cold air as if he was convulsing. He suddenly sobered up and shouted, "Saint, saint!" But the Daoist in front of him was gone, and there were only birds chirping and monkeys crying on the cliff. General Zhang opened his eyes wide and he looked left and right in panic. When he didn't see anyone, he sighed and complained, Oh, what did I say wrong? Why did the saint just leave? I didn't say anything. I just urged him. Why did he disappear? Hey, oh damn, what time is it now? Why am I here? Someone come here. How is the battle situation? Chapter 737. A few days later, the news that the Tongtian Dragon King of the Rong Kingdom's 2 saints went all the way to Donghai spread. It was said that the Rong Kingdom's army was in a stalemate in the capital of Donghai Kingdom, but the Tongtian Dragon King, whose real name was Lu Gongzan, did not show up. After that, Zhang Pulu, the general of the Rong Kingdom's southern punitive army, returned to his tent and was furious. But his soldiers felt that the general was using his anger to cover up his uneasiness. General Zhang did not have many accomplishments in commanding and military affairs. He was far inferior to the 2 surrendered generals of the other 2 armies. The reason why he could control the other 2 armies was that he was an old acquaintance of Emperor Rong. The southern punitive army often relied on the magical power of the 2 saints to conquer cities and territories. But now that the 2 saints suddenly left, he had no one to rely on, so he began to feel guilty. After another 3 or 4 days there was no more news. The Rong Kingdom held a celebration party after conquering the capital of Donghai Kingdom. Zhang Pulu got drunk at the banquet. After drinking he pulled someone over to talk. It turned out that before Lu Gongzan left that day, his expression was flustered and he looked extremely uneasy. The Tongtian Dragon King had always been an immortal in the eyes of the soldiers of the Rong Kingdom, and he was... But something made him lose his composure like that. Was it true or not? If everyone was sure of what happened, they would realize the seriousness of the matter and keep their mouths shut. But if everyone was guessing the truth of the matter and suspected that General Zhang was talking nonsense after drinking, they would have the desire to talk about it. The phrase "keep their mouths shut" had always been a beautiful yearning. Therefore General Zhang's private words spread quickly. Many people on Midland heard the news and took action. But 1 year ago Lu Gongzan was just a nobody. Most people knew little about him. Only the most powerful and well-informed people knew what it meant for him to leave in a hurry. When the Purple Knight Immortal, who was in charge of Penglai, heard the news, it was already 3 days after Lu Gongzan left Donghai Kingdom. He was stunned for a while before he sent Qin Fengzi to him. The hall where Lord Donghai used to discuss matters with his subordinates remained unchanged. The people of the lifeless immortal sect installed many everlasting lamps in the hall, causing this place to not be as gloomy and cold as before. The Purple Knight Enlightened sat on Lord Donghai's former throne while Qin Fengzi stood below. The true state cultivator studied the necromancer for a while before saying, "What kind of person do you think Li Yunxin is?" The hall was spacious. His voice echoed in the hall, making it sound hollow. Although Qin Fengzi was someone close to the 10,000-year-old ancestor, he couldn't be compared to the Purple Knight Enlightened Master. In the past he had only seen him from afar a few times. At that time he was surrounded by a group of high-grade cultivators that disciples like Qin Fengzi could not approach. Because one belonged to the sect of cultivators and the other belonged to the sect of necromancers, the two of them could not be said to be familiar with each other. Even after they returned from fighting with Li Yunxin, they were sent by the Patriarch to serve the Purple Knight Immortal. Facing such a question, Qin Fengzi revealed a slightly frightened expression. This sentence made him feel as if he had become a close friend of this enlightened master, and he could chat with him casually. But he knew that was not the case. So he thought for a while before answering. In front of the enlightened master, I don't dare to make a rash decision. The Purple Knight Enlightened Master leaned forward. His clothes rubbed against each other, making a rustling sound. He looked at Qin Fengzi with interest. I heard that you used to be in the vast army and escaped to Li Yunxin's side and he spared your life. Later I heard that he killed hundreds of thousands of elite sea demons in a frenzy. But at such a time he spared your life and handed you over to the Patriarch. Yet you say that you don't dare to make a rash decision. Are you lying? Qin Fengzi was silent for a while before saying, at that time I had a conflict of interest with him. He spared my life because I was useful to him. The Purple Knight Enlightened Master laughed. In that case you have a good impression of him. Qin Fengzi frowned. The Patriarch said that he is a great enemy of our sect. The Enlightened Master laughed and waved his hand. No need to be so cautious. Qin Fengzi, I know you. You are a diligent necromancer. The Patriarch likes you and I have a good impression of you as well. There are only the two of us here and I am not testing you. At this point he stopped laughing and sighed. Actually, my impression of Li Yunxin isn't bad. The Patriarch said that Li Yunxin pretended to be courteous with him, but was actually harboring evil intentions. But I met him before he went to Dragon Island and spoke to him for a while. Just from what he said, I feel that the Patriarch might not be telling the truth. At that time he clearly did not have any ill intentions towards our sect. Qin Fengzi was silent. The Purple Knight Enlightened Master stared at him for a while and said calmly, it seems that I know what you think of him. He stood up from the throne and walked a few steps with his hands behind his back. He sighed and said, it seems that the rumors are indeed untrustworthy. There are many rumors about Li Yunxin. They all say that he is a sinister, cunning and ruthless person. Such a person should be deserted by everyone and have no friends to entrust him to. Before I met him I thought so too. But now that I have met him I feel that he is not what I imagined him to be. When I learned what happened afterwards, my opinion of him was greatly improved. One is me. He pointed at himself, then at Qin Fengzi. The other is me. He is one of the smart people in the sect. Both of us have a good impression of him, which means that this is the truth. Qin Fengzi was slightly frightened. How can I be compared to the Enlightened Master? The Purple Knight Enlightened Master laughed. You are so cautious and fearful. Why, do you think that I am disloyal to the sect because of that Li Yunxin, or do you think that I am testing you on purpose to see if you are disloyal? Seeing that Qin Fengzi did not speak, he shook his head. Neither. Qin Fengzi, listen to my orders. After saying the last two sentences he became serious. Qin Fengzi was slightly startled. Yes. The Patriarch told me that Li Yunxin caused trouble on Dragon Island again. The immortal Lord Shinryu is currently cultivating and cannot be distracted to deal with him. Thus the Patriarch planned to lure him out of Dragon Island. I am asking you about your impression of him because the Patriarch's plan is to use a few people to lure him out. If he really is a heartless person, then the Patriarch's plan needs to be discussed. But now, since the Patriarch, me and you all think that Li Yunxin is a sentimental person, it means that he also has a weakness. When he was insignificant he befriended an artist called Lu Gongzan in Wei City. Although there were many obstacles after that, he still took care of that person. Can be seen that Lu Gongzan is very important to him. The Patriarch's plan is very simple. Spread the news that Li Yunxin is in danger on Dragon Island and see if that Lu Gongzan will come to save him. If he really comes, it means that this plan can be used. I just received news that Lu Gongzan did abandon Rongjun a few days ago and hurried to the East Sea. Seems that he has fallen into a trap. So there is something I need you to do. Go find Lu Gongzan. Tell him that you are also Li Yunxin's friend and are dissatisfied with the Immortal sect. Now I can't bear to see Li Yunxin fall into a trap and his friend fall into a trap, so I am going to inform him. Shinren. Qin Fengzi hurriedly interrupted him. Why should I do this? It's not that I don't want to work for the Immortal sect, but I am afraid that my own stupidity will ruin the Patriarch's plan. Because you are the most suitable person for this matter. The Zai Zhenren looked at him meaningfully. What you said to him is all based on facts. You are someone who can say a few words in front of the Patriarch. The Patriarch sees you as a genius in magic. You were placed in the vast army to be the commander of the necromancers. He originally planned to use you after a period of experience, you should think so. But when the Immortal sect was in trouble, no one actually informed you. As a result, you and the other disciples were in danger. You had no choice but to seek a way out from Li Yunxin, and he actually saved you. One side is resentment and the other side is kindness. After spending a few days with Li Yunxin, he became quite kind to you. He also discussed arrays and spells with you which greatly benefited you. It is not strange that you became disloyal and even went to inform the Immortal sect. I heard that Lu Gongzan is a true disciple of Li Yunxin, and he is also very good at scheming. Only if you go he may believe you. If it were someone else, I am afraid that they would be seen through immediately. Tell me who else but you should go this time. Qin Fengzi's face turned pale. His body swayed twice and he suddenly knelt on the ground shouting, Shinren, please understand. I have absolutely no such intention. The Purple Knight Immortal sighed. Do you still think that I am testing you? Stand up and talk. What is this? Qin Fengzi refused to get up. Even if you are not testing me, I have absolutely no such intention. Moreover, if Lu Gongzan is as meticulous as you said, how would he believe me? Even if I go and tell him the reason you mentioned, it will only be between betrayal and non-betrayal. The Immortal sect has given me a new lease of life. If I betray them just because I suffered some grievances here and gained some benefits there, isn't it too far-fetched? The Purple Knight Immortal smiled. You have also thought of this. Very good. This shows that you are suitable for this kind of thing. Qin Fengzi, Li Yunxin became a great demon a long time ago, and Lu Gongzan was just a poor old painter at that time. At that time, the two of them did not spend much time together, and there should not be any deep feelings between them. But Li Yunxin valued him, saved him several times, and showed kindness to him. Think about it. If the two of them were ordinary people in the marketplace and only used common sense to think about things, how could they have come to this stage today? Whether it is Li Yunxin or Lu Gongzan, they are all people of character. When people of character do things, a thought or a look to their liking will make them friends for life and death. Now that you go to see him, you will become a person of character. When Lu Gongzan sees you like this, he will feel that Li Yunxin is worthy of you. The flaw you mentioned is actually the best guarantee. Qin Fengzi was silent for a while and slowly stood up. In that case, Shinren wants me to do this errand. Say, fine. Chapter 738. If it was the Lord of the Eastern Sea or any other sovereign, he would have ordered the servants to leave at this point. But Spiritual Master Purple Knight seemed to be very interested in Qin Fengzi. After looking at him for a while, he said, Junior Marshal Brother, why did you sigh? Qin Fengzi hesitated for a while as if he didn't know what to say next. But when he looked up at Spiritual Master Purple Knight again, he found that the other's eyes were meaningful. Then an idea came into his mind, and before he could know what it was, the words had slipped out of his mouth, as if they were possessed by some supernatural force. I heard that after you returned to Ruoxue with serious injuries, you lost your cultivation and became a ghost cultivator. I also heard that the root of a ghost cultivator's existence is an obsession. Qin Fengzi looked at him. What is Spiritual Master's obsession? This question seemed to have nothing to do with what they were going to talk about today. It shouldn't be asked by Qin Fengzi, who was still trembling with fear, and it shouldn't be asked by anyone. The obsession of a ghost cultivator was a matter of life and death. If it was known by others, the consequences could be serious or light. If an expert designed according to the obsession, it would be very disadvantageous to the ghost cultivator. But when Spiritual Master Purple Knight heard it, he didn't immediately answer or reprimand. His expression became even more profound. After looking at the servants with a scrutinizing gaze, he smiled instead. My obsession is the same as everyone else's in the Celestial Gate. To return to the mainland and rebuild the Celestial Gate. On this point, Ancestor has taught us by example and made us remember it every day. I am no exception. Elder Ancestor once said that if anyone dares to challenge the belief of our lifeless immortal gate, everyone has the right to kill them. What I am doing now, I feel that I am following the teachings of our lifeless immortal gate's master, and I have a clear conscience. Junior Marshal brother, what do you think? Qin Fengzi looked straight at him, as if he needed to use a lot of strength to say the next sentence. But when all the strength was added together in the end, it only became a hoarse sentence that echoed softly in the empty hall. The great formation that the ancestor set up in the vast sea. What is it for? Spiritual Master Purple Knight revealed an imperceptible smile. He paced around the hall with his hands behind his back, then turned to look at Qin Fengzi. What you asked is the question that many people in the sect wanted to ask but didn't dare to ask. I wasn't wrong about you. I once asked the ancestor this question. He paused and looked at Qin Fengzi. Then the ancestor ordered me to see Li Yunxin. Perhaps it's because both of us have the same question. That's why he sent you to me. On this trip, we'll act according to circumstances, Reverend Violet Knight said softly. We'll take a good look and see what kind of person Lu Gongzan is. Again, he emphasized, adapt to the situation. About 3 to 4 breaths later, Qin Fengzi said in a low voice, I understand. Then let's go. The capital of Donghai Nation had fallen for several days. The northern half of this small country was already under Emperor Rong's rule, but the southern half was still in chaos. The resistance army, the revolutionary army, and the ambitious people all appeared, and it was even more chaotic than the occupied area in the north. In the midst of all this chaos, it was already the end of the year, the last day of the year. However, the fall of the country was imminent, and it seemed that not many people cared about such things. Except for Baishui town on the southeast coast. In fact, more than a month ago, Baishui town had already been occupied by the troops of Sea King Lu Fei. Half a month after Lu Baishui's fleet went out to sea, pirates who had been active on the ocean suddenly launched a large-scale attack. After 3 battles they wiped out the Donghai Navy and landed there. At that time many people were puzzled by the behavior of the pirates. They could come and go freely on the sea, but on land, they were like tigers in a cage, waiting for the Donghai Nation's army to encircle them. Only then did they realize that the pirates had foresight. Soon after Baishui town was occupied, Emperor Rong's army went all the way south. The war at the border had already caused them to be badly battered. Who would care about the scabies here to relieve the itch? So today there was no war in Baishui town and people lived as usual. Many ignorant people even thought that after the arrival of the pirates, their lives were better than before. Since there was no government, they didn't have to pay taxes at the end of the year, and they could eat for many days. Lu Fei, who had always been famous but had never seen his real face, issued several laws to strictly prohibit disturbances, theft and other acts. He also opened the government's granary and distributed large tracts of land that originally belonged to the officials and nobles. Although most of the land was distributed to the pirates who came from the sea, at least the townspeople felt that the pirates would not have any evil intentions now that they had a livelihood. It also made them feel that these people didn't seem to want to plunder and then return to the sea, but intended to operate here for a long time. What's more, many people were surprised to find that a considerable number of the pirates were people they knew in the past. For example, someone who killed a notorious country squire, in a rage because his land was seized and his family was separated. Everyone thought he was long dead. For example, someone who set a fire at night to take revenge because his sister, who was a servant in the county magistrate's family, was beaten to death. Everyone thought he was long dead. Many such examples made the townspeople feel more cordial, and they began to realize that the pirates were not as heinous as they were rumored to be. Many people who couldn't survive on the land or who had a deep hatred for others went there. The people didn't know much about legal principles and laws. Their situation and limited knowledge made them naturally sympathize with people who were of the same class and had similar experiences as them. The atmosphere created by this kind of simple kindness made the town even more peaceful. Only a very small number of people would notice and think about such a thing. Just like not all the rich were arrogant and lascivious, not all the poor were simple and kind. Among the many pirates, there must be many who committed crimes and were cruel and violent. Otherwise, the Sea King Lu Fei wouldn't have been in a stalemate with the government and the army for so many years. But now there were no such people in the town. However, this also made them realize the depth of Sea King Lu Fei's intentions. They really planned to come here and not leave. Because of these reasons, on this day at the end of the year, Whitewater Town was more lively than usual. Red lanterns were hung under the eaves of the houses. Since early in the morning, every family was busy taking off the faux characters and couplets that had been exposed to the wind and sun for a year and replacing them with new ones. Smoke was coming out of the chimneys. The housewives were busy frying, and the whole town was filled with the fragrance of meat and oil. There was residual snow on the streets and the wind was biting. But with hot food in their stomachs and money in their arms, they didn't feel cold even when facing the wind. This was also thanks to the pirates who landed on the land. It was said that the Sea King Lu Fei distributed his personal wealth to the townspeople, and every family received 2 taels of silver. Those who were old, weak, sick or disabled in their families had more meat and a pot of oil. Such a peaceful scene attracted many refugees. But the Sea King set up a porridge stall 10 miles away from the town, and sent a team of strong and fierce-looking pirates to guard it. He only selected some young and strong people who were skilled or had curable diseases and let them into the town. The rest were blocked outside the town. But even so, the new owner of Whitewater Town won a good reputation. At the moment, the new owner was in the big house of the East Sea Inn. Nearly 2 months ago he had a pleasant conversation with a guest from the north here. Now there were still 2 people in the house, but the scene was very different. Lu Fei or Lu Baishui wrapped himself in a heavy fur cloak, leaned against the stove and looked out of the window with a gloomy expression. This was the highest point of Whitewater Town and he could see the bustling scene in the town. If one had magical power and good hearing, he could hear many people talking about how good the Sea King Lu Fei was. But he didn't seem to be interested in these things. He sighed, stretched out his hand from the fur, grabbed the wine bottle on the low table and quickly retracted it as if he was afraid of the cold. After warming it for a while he drank a mouthful of wine. I wasn't like this before. Lu Baishui sighed again. 2 months ago when Li Yunxin was here, I wasn't afraid of the cold at all. You are immortal and you can't stand the turbulence of spiritual power during the battle of magical power. You're lucky that you're still alive. Another person was like him before, standing on the balcony with his hands behind his back looking at the sea. When he said this he turned around. It was Lu Gongzan, who was rumored to be heading to the East Sea in a panic. But now you're on land and you're an old friend of Prince Rong. He has promised to let you govern Whitewater Town, and in the future, you can be considered a feudal lord, which is better than drifting on the sea. Lu Gongzan looked at his complexion. It's not impossible to make your body better. I can teach you a set of martial arts. As long as you can calm your mind and practice hard, your body will be as strong as before in a few years or as long as 30 years. If you continue to practice hard, you can. Lu Baishui raised his hand lazily. That's enough. Before I met you, I was a little interested in these things. After that, forget it. I saw the immortals on the sea with my own eyes. I saw the immortals fighting. In the past, when I was at Aquarius Bay, I already felt that the East Sea's water demons were terrifying. But that night when I saw Li Yunxin fighting with someone, I realized that there really are such methods in this world. Sai, you people, you either had a fortuitous encounter or started to temper your mind from a young age. As for me, he laughed and drank another mouthful of wine. After all these years of wandering, I can't calm my mind. Now that I've seen these things, I feel even more indifferent to everything. Cultivation, forget it. Those people in the town think that immortals are all good, eating from a golden rice bowl and sleeping on a white jade bed. But now I know that being an immortal isn't necessarily happy, and I'm afraid it's even more dangerous. Thanks to you, he dragged out his voice and curled his lips, I have this town justifiably. Being able to settle down my brothers can also be considered as getting rid of a disaster on the sea. From now on I'll retire here. I have an endless supply of gold and silver, and if I practice my knife every day, I might be able to live for another 30 to 50 years. It's considered a happy life for mortals. Chapter 739. Lu Gongzan nodded and walked to the window. You can see it clearly. Because of this, you will be happier than many people in the future. Lu Baishui curled his lips again. Alas, this is my fate. It is indeed your fate. Lu Gongzan smiled. On my way here, many villages and towns were destroyed in the tsunami. Only your Whitewater Town is safe. It is also God's will. Lu Baishui laughed. God's will? What is God's will? Why do you think I chose to live in Whitewater Town? The terrain here is special. The waves of the tsunami will be divided into two sides when they reach the sea. It has not been like this for thousands of years. It is my good judgment. I say, old immortal, what on earth are you doing here? Is Li Yunxin in trouble? Lu Gongzan was silent for a while by the window and whispered, I plan to celebrate the new year with him at the end of the year. Alas. Then he is in trouble. Lu Baishui raised his eyebrows. What kind of trouble can a person like him have? He is like an immortal. There are many immortals and demons. Lu Gongzan let out a sigh. I will stay here for a while. I will stay here for a day or a few days. Don't reveal my whereabouts. Lu Baishui raised the small wine jar and rolled his eyes. Happy New Year. When it was dark and the red lanterns on the street were lit, a seemingly down-and-out painter came to the door of the Donghai Inn. He was about 50 or 60 years old and his skin was like tree bark. He was wearing a Taoist robe that was neither old nor new. It looked like it had just been washed and ironed with hot water by an iron ladle. When he appeared at the door, the waiter thought he was here to ask for money. The kitchen of the Donghai Inn had been working hard these days, and they had to steam dozens of pounds of steamed buns every day. The waiter had been busy all day and was freezing in front of the door. He was eager to get rid of the steamed buns that were as hard as stones so that he could go home after work for New Year's Eve. So when he saw Lao Dao, he quickly opened the steamer and put the steamed buns in the white curtain. As he stuffed the steamed buns into the white curtain, he exhaled white gas. Come on, take them all away. Let's all go home for the new year. Hearing this, the old painter coughed. I didn't come to ask for a reward. I am here to look for someone. As he spoke, he stood to the side. It was as if the man's words had insulted his character. Annoyed, the waiter threw the steamed bun back into the steamer and frowned. Who are you looking for? Who do you know here? Are you from outside? He coughed to make himself look solemn. Lao Dao, I'm looking for. There's no one you're looking for, ah. The waiter raised his face and ignored him. Lao Dao also frowned and looked at him. But he did not leave. Instead, he took 2 steps to the side and stood by the door of the inn without saying a word. The waiter thought he didn't know how to appreciate kindness and wanted him to stand there and suffer in the cold. About an hour later, a few people came to ask for the remaining steamed buns. Only then did the waiter pack up his things and plan to return to the inn. At this time he looked to the side and saw that Lao Dao was shivering in the cold, but he still straightened his back and tried his best to look solemn and dignified. But the darker the night, the stronger the wind. The old man was so cold that he sniffed his nose. No matter what, he couldn't be dignified. His heart softened and he sighed. Ah, good. You can really endure it. Who are you looking for? Today I'm the only waiter in the inn. The others are our boss. Are you looking for the wrong place? Lao Dao trembled and said, I. At this time Lu Baishui came out of the inn. His whole body was wrapped in fur, only his face was exposed. He seemed to be taking a breather at the door. The waiter hurriedly turned his face. Boss, there's someone looking for someone. Lu Baishui glanced at Lao Dao, thought for a moment and waved his hand. Call him in. He turned around and went back. The waiter looked at Lao Dao. How can you say this? Why didn't you say you were looking for our boss earlier? Master Dao, please come in, please come in. Lao Dao nodded to the waiter. He looked down at his Taoist robe, then combed his beard and walked in. There were only 3 oil lamps in the inn, so it was very dim. The old painter entered the door and was about to find his way when he heard a voice coming from the east stairs. Go to the 3rd floor, room number 1. He calmed himself down and followed the voice up the stairs. On the 3rd floor he squinted his eyes and searched for a while. He found room number 1 at the end of the corridor. He stood in front of the door and hesitated for a moment. He reached out and knocked on the door. But the door opened by itself and a gust of warm air blew into his face. Then he could clearly see the inside of the room. There were no candles, but it was very bright. It was like the afternoon and there was a warm yellow light. A black-haired Taoist priest in his 40s or 50s was also wearing a Taoist robe and sitting in front of a table. This Taoist priest's Taoist robe was also simple and pale blue. But there was not a single crease on it, as if it was woven by flowing water. The old painter saw his face and hurriedly said, I went the wrong way, I went the wrong way. Forgive me, forgive me. As he spoke he was about to leave, but he saw the person raise his head. Brother Zhao, you're right. It's me, Lu Gongzan. Lao Dao was stunned. He stared at him for a while as if he didn't know what to say. At that moment someone in the town set off firecrackers. Only after a series of popping sounds did he regain his consciousness. He blinked his eyes. As he spoke, he walked into the room as if he was sleepwalking. He didn't know how he sat down next to Lu Gongzan. He didn't know what he was thinking. He stared at him for a long time, then said, "You should be 66 this year." After saying this, he seemed to wake up from a dream and quickly shut his mouth. When he saw Lu Gongzan with his own eyes, he was so surprised that he almost forgot his current identity. In the months that he left Li Yunxin, Lu Gongzan did something that Li Yunxin couldn't do. He established his own intelligence network. Even if this network was very loose and not presentable in the eyes of many people. He used to be a down-and-out painter who traveled the martial arts world. Although he didn't have any skills, he had a particularly clever mouth because he was disheartened by the affairs of the world. He went to many cities and countries and also met many painters. The profession of a painter was relatively special. The more skilled ones could own a temple or a Daoist temple. Those who were even more brilliant could become the honored guest of the nobles and ministers. If they could reach the highest realm that mortals could reach, they could even become officials. Therefore, painters seemed to be naturally more noble than ordinary people. They could slightly pry into the world of the Daoist cultivators. But they were also rooted in the secular world, which also made them a group with a certain degree of exclusivity. Lao Dao had traveled the martial arts world and could be said to have a wide range of friends. Although he couldn't be considered a close friend, his relationships with people were not bad. Therefore, in the months that he traveled the world, he found some old friends that he had made in the past. When he met those with good talent and got along well, he would pass on some painting techniques. His cultivation technique came from Li Yunxin. It was a technique that had been lost for a long time. Today there were only 4 people in the world who truly knew this technique. As one of them, and with a cultivation that could be said to ascend to the heavens in the cultivation world, how could people not worship him? It was also because of him that many painters knew that more than 1,000 years ago, they were decent cultivators who could stand on equal footing with the cultivators of the orthodoxies and sword sections. There were not only 2 Taoist orthodox sects in the world but 3. These painters, who had been covered by dust for 1,000 years, were suppressed by Daotong and Kenzo for being unorthodox sects. It turned out that they were set up. Now, as Lu Gongzan rose to the top, these painters, who were scattered all over Midland, immediately realized that they had found a backbone, a strong and powerful core. Not only did they have the legal orthodoxy, but they also had practical benefits. Therefore, Lu Gongzan had gradually become the #1 painter in the world. However, he was never willing to accept this position. He said that the real master of the art of painting was currently traveling the world. When that master came back, the art of painting would be revived. As long as something could bring great benefits to people and someone started it, there would naturally be many others who would actively complete the rest. Without Lu Gongzan doing it himself, these painters had already formed a loose group and divided themselves into different classes. After that, they would offer everything they had done to this old man, and thus, a basic channel of information would be formed. This was not the first time for Lu Gongzan to use this channel. Rongjun had conquered cities and conquered territories with an irresistible force, and those painters had contributed a lot. This man in front of him was also an old friend of Lu Gongzan. Today he came here to deliver a message. However, seeing that his old friend had become so much younger and had such a great temperament, he felt like he had fallen into a dream and even lost his composure. Outside the door, he tried his best to look serious, because he didn't want to be looked down upon by others. But now he realized that all his efforts were in vain. Nevertheless, Lu Gongzan had seen this kind of situation many times. He smiled and said, "Time doesn't matter in cultivation. Brother Zhao, what message do you have for me?" Painter Zhao silently pinched his own thigh to wake himself up. He started regretting sitting so close to Ji Hao. He didn't know if it was an illusion, but he felt that he couldn't breathe next to Lu Gongzan. There seemed to be some kind of powerful aura around him. Painter Zhao started to feel that his Taoist robe didn't fit him well, and he had too much white hair. His face was too shriveled and his appearance was somewhat comical. This caused his body to slowly wither as if he could shrink so that he couldn't be seen. He also didn't have the clear speech he had when he was outside the door. He stammered, Yes, Lao Dao Cui, that Lao Dao Cui, the one from Chuzhou City, you might not remember him, but he's now my superior. Hall master say that. Lu Gongzan looked at him tolerantly, not in a hurry. Painter Zhao's current appearance reminded him of himself in the past. Not too long ago he might have been like this in front of Brother Xin. Brother Xin also wasn't in a hurry at that time. He smiled again, picked up the wine pot on the table, poured him a cup of light wine and pushed it in front of him. Yes, I remember. Today is New Year's Eve, Brother Zhou. We two old brothers can be considered fated. Come, drink a cup of wine and warm yourself up first. Speak slowly. Painter Zhou used both hands to carefully pick up the wine cup and drank it in one gulp. He felt a wave of warmth rise from his stomach, and his body immediately became slightly livelier. Thus he spoke more quickly. Yes. This Lao Dao Cui told me to say that recently, there was someone who said he was looking for you. He said he had news of a friend of yours. Said your friend is at sea. He told everything he knew in bits and pieces, drinking 3 more cups of light wine in the process. After 4 cups of wine, he felt an indescribable sense of comfort throughout his body. Since he was a painter, he had naturally tried to refine qi but to no avail. But now, after drinking Lu Gongzhan's wine, he felt as if there was a trickle of water flowing through his meridians, as if a perennially dry river had been added with running water, nourishing his bones and muscles. After he finished speaking, he was no longer as nervous and embarrassed. Only then did he realize the changes in his body. He knew that the person in front of him, Lu Gongzhan, had definitely given him benefits. The benefits that ordinary people in the secular world wanted were nothing more than money and power. Although the two were rare, there was always a possibility. But how could the benefits that he had obtained be something that money and power could compare to? Perhaps it meant cultivation and longevity. Joy and excitement surged in Painter Zhao's heart, such that he didn't know how to sit or what to say. It was like a person who had obtained a precious treasure and was holding it in his bosom. He was eager to take it out to have a look and examine it, but he did not dare to close his eyes and meditate in front of Lu Gongzhan. Lu Gongzhan listened to the news he brought, thought for a moment and let out a light breath. Then, seeing through Painter Zhao's thoughts, he smiled faintly. Good old Zhao, I've troubled you to make this trip. What you just drank was golden jade wine. It can connect the spirit and flow qi, strengthening the body. It will be of great benefit to your cultivation. In a moment, go back and find a quiet place to breathe and refine qi. Use a few days of effort to dissolve the medicinal strength. It will guarantee that you won't suffer from illness for the rest of your life. Painter Zhao immediately stood up after receiving this affirmative reply. He opened his mouth but couldn't say anything. Lu Gongzhan nodded. I know what you're thinking. Everything is said without words. Go. When you run into old friends, tell them that I haven't forgotten them. Painter Zhao shut his mouth. He wiped his eyes, nodded heavily 3 times and then hurriedly withdrew. After he left for a while, Lu Gongzhan stood up and slowly walked to the window. Painter Zhao wasn't the first person to bring this kind of news. In recent days there had already been dozens of such messages. He believed that there would be even more in the coming days. Each person's description of claiming that Lu Gongzhan's friend was at sea had a different appearance and identity. This meant that someone was spreading the news, hoping to use this method to get in touch with him. In this boundless world, it was very difficult for a person to find another person. It wasn't difficult to meet, but to let that person know his intentions. The other party couldn't find him, so he cast a wide net. And he also had a net and many sources of information. In this way, when the 2 nets met, a lot of information would be gathered, and the person he wanted to find would always be found. This was a good method. The friend at sea naturally referred to Li Yunxin. The person who spread the news should be someone from the lifeless Immortal sect. In the lifeless Immortal sect, someone wanted to see him. But for what? He thought for a while and heard the sound of firecrackers outside the window. Looking down from here, the lights of every house in Whitewater Town were lit, and it looked very warm. Brother Xin was at the Dragon Island on the sea. Dragon Island? What was it like? Right now? What kind of situation was he in? Lu Gongzhan really hoped that tonight, even if it was just tonight, Li Yunxin wouldn't stay in some damp and cold place and wouldn't be too worried. So he let out a light breath and said in a low voice, Brother Xin, Happy New Year. Chapter 740. Right now, Li Yunxin wasn't in a cold and damp environment. This house was built with futuristic technology and had all kinds of unimaginable facilities. It wasn't something that could be described with just the word comfortable. He planned to find a key program in the system of this house to counter the true dragon, but it seemed that he did not make much progress. Until the first day after the spring festival, he was still trapped in this house. It was just that the conditions were a bit better than before. Because he thought of something, If this house was just an ordinary house, there was no need to create a living system that could provide all kinds of food. Since there was such a thing, it meant that this house should be used for long-term survival. For those who still ate raw meat and drank blood, a piece of raw meat was enough to satisfy them. For the people in this world, a book, a bottle of wine, and a few dishes should be enough to satisfy them. However, for many people in Li Yunxin's world, it was unbearable to stay in a confined space for a long time without any external communication network or several kinds of entertainment equipment. The food, background, and movies that he created should be enough for the people in his world. But the people in the other world should have higher requirements. He felt that this house still had potential, in terms of entertainment. In the end he found it. He didn't do it on purpose, but when he was looking for the key point that he needed, he accidentally created it. On the first day of the new year, when Xinryu came to visit Li Yunxin after a few days, he had already stayed in this small space for almost a month. The last time they met, Li Yunxin seemed to be living a happy life, and even bought some New Year's goods. The house was also clean and lively, and the atmosphere was festive. When Xinryu showed up this time, she was slightly surprised. It wasn't because Li Yunxin was living a good life, but the house's appearance changed so much that she couldn't recognize it. It seemed to be an extremely wide space. There was no dome, no walls. Looking around, the sky was glowing with a strange light purple color, so it shouldn't be the sky of Midland. In the west, there was an incomparably huge full moon, as if it could be reached with one's hand, and there were even some huge mountains on the moon. There were two smaller moons in the south. One was light blue and the other was light white. The three huge moons overlooking the world made people involuntarily feel a strange sense of fear. The land under the giant moon was flat and dark purple. The color did not come from the vegetation. In fact, it was desolate, but from the sand itself. But on such a flat land there were many towering mountains. The strange-looking rocks on the mountain peaks were like long and thin awls that pierced the sky, as if they were going to stab the three giant moons down. But after the initial shock, Xinryu quickly realized that what he saw was an illusion. The dome and the walls projected an image that was enough to pass off as real. Because she saw Li Yunxin nearby. If it was really a vast space, he would have run away long ago. However, Xinryu was also surprised by Li Yunxin's current appearance. He was now wearing a strange outfit. He was wrapped in a huge white robe which made him look bloated. His head was hidden in an equally large round helmet, and his face couldn't be seen. That was because half of the helmet seemed to be made of golden glass or colored glass, covering his face. Who else could make such a strange appearance other than him? Li Yunxin walked out from behind a pile of rocks that were taller than a person and pressed on the side of the helmet. There was a tearing sound and the golden helmet popped open, revealing his face. Xinryu was surprised and delighted to see that his face didn't look good. She didn't know if it was just her imagination, but she thought that she saw the dark circles under Li Yunxin's eyes. She couldn't help but take a few steps to the side and saw the things behind the pile of rocks. The ground was a mess. There were transparent bottles, plates, and small bones. There were also some colorful bags. Although she didn't know what they were for, she thought that they had something to do with food. She had seen the ability of the house to put things away by itself, and was astonished to see it in such a way. But soon she looked around her surroundings and smiled. "You didn't have a good time?" Li Yunxin looked at her and frowned. "What? You took good care of this place a few days ago. But now it's a mess. You didn't have to do it yourself. Can only mean that you did it on purpose." This kind of feeling. Xinryu pondered for a moment. "I can't say. But I know it's not a good feeling. I'm playing. I'm happy," Li Yunxin said. At the same time he put on the helmet so that Xinryu couldn't see his face. But Xinryu didn't want to shut up. She smiled again and looked around again. "Where is this alien? You won't understand," Li Yunxin said in a muffled voice. "Planet MA67793 LPPB. It's the first habitable planet discovered by the people of that world. Do you understand? Illiterate. Native." Xinryu thought for a while and didn't get angry. "Although I don't understand, I know you're talking about another world." She looked into the distance again. "I also think that you seem to be in such a vast world instead of a house or a jungle. It means that you like a wide and empty place. Li Yunxin, do you feel suffocated after staying in this house for so long?" Li Yunxin's muffled voice came from the helmet. "Ha, self-righteous. Isn't it normal for me to feel suffocated? Who wouldn't feel suffocated after staying in one place for a long time? Is there a need to guess? It's not the suffocation of mortals. Shinryu stopped laughing and said seriously, I've experienced what you're experiencing. Mortals feel suffocated in a house, but it's not unbearable. Many people are imprisoned for decades, but they still live and don't go crazy. But you and I, we're not cultivators who have abandoned their emotions. The world we've seen is too vast. The wider the world is and the more powerful it is, the more we can't stand being trapped in one place. Especially when you don't know when you can leave this place. That's another thing. You said that you want to understand the mysteries of this house. The progress these days isn't going well, is it? Shinryu's words might be correct. Staying in this house was getting more and more unbearable. But it wasn't the suffocation that she said, but the feeling of isolation. Li Yunxin had experienced this feeling before. When he entered his own scroll, he was like an omniscient god. He was the entire space, and the entire space was him. There were even a few times when he felt that if there was life in a higher dimension than humans, it would be the same feeling he had at that time. When he returned to the real world, he felt uncomfortable. He could force himself to get used to it after a while, but it wouldn't disappear. Because of this, he didn't enter his own scroll often. Because every time he entered after the extreme sense of fulfillment, there would be a longer period of pain. And now he was here. This place was even more isolated than the real world. This house was isolated from the spiritual power. Li Yunxin felt that the space this house was in didn't belong to the Midland world, but something like a crevice. Thus, he realized that he seemed to have been abandoned on a deserted island. He should be able to feel the suffocation that Shinryu mentioned, and it was 100 times stronger than that. It should be right on Li Yunxin's mind. He wrapped himself in the strange costume, turned his face suddenly, and without a word returned to the back of the strange stone. From the moment he came to this secret room, he had been proud and seemed to have the upper hand. This made the previous owner of this house, Shinryu, angry and afraid, but he couldn't do anything to him. Now it seemed that the situation had changed. These days Shinryu had been tortured by Li Yunxin, and now that he had this opportunity, he wouldn't let him go easily. So the illusion took 2 steps to the side and followed him behind the strange rock. I heard that after Lu Gongzan knew about you, he immediately left Rongjun, who was still attacking the city, and came to the East Sea. Now the lifeless immortal sect has sent out an emissary. Shinryu smiled. What do you think he's going to do? Li Yunxin went back behind the strange rock, and sat down against a natural stone wall. Hearing Shinryu's words, he said in a muffled voice, Guess what? What good things will you guys do? Either block it or kill it. It's a pity that before I came to the East Sea, I made him the dragon body of hatred. Now he should be at a very high level, and I left him some painting books. Humph. He simply took off his helmet and showed a mocking smile. More importantly, he has a smart brain, different from you stupid things. What can you do to him? Shinryu was surprised and smiled, but she wasn't angry. Oh, so you admit that you care a lot about him. Even a fool can see that, big sister. Li Yunxin frowned. On the other hand, you came to present your treasures to me as if you had discovered one of the top 10 unsolved mysteries of the world. That has refreshed my understanding of stupidity. Hearing you speak seriously, I feel uneasy. But now that you're sharp-tongued and mean, I'm relieved. Shinryu let out a sigh. I know you're the most ambitious person. Even when you're in trouble, you're not willing to act pitiful. Now that your aura is even stronger, it shows that you're the most uncertain. But you guessed wrong. I'm not going to block and kill Lu Gongzan. You did give him a good cultivation, and to kill him you have to pay a great price. But there's another way. Someone as strong as you who can summon the help of the Grand Elder, isn't he also trapped in this room? I heard from the lifeless immortal sect that they're going to express their goodwill to him. For example, if you don't fight, you don't get to know each other, and you've known each other for a long time, they can't bear to see you die like this, so they're going to persuade him not to fall into the trap. Although it's more troublesome to do this, it's also more effortless. Li Yunxin, Shinryu looked at him. Your progress isn't going well. I'll give you one last chance. Tell me everything you know, and then I'll think about how to deal with you. But no matter what, it's better than Lu Gongzan dying first and you dying later. Li Yunxin frowned slightly, as if he was seriously considering Shinryu's suggestion. It took a full quarter of an hour. In the distant sky, the 3 huge moons slowly descended towards the south. Thus, the northern horizon was suffused with a faint golden light. Shinryu waited patiently, until the golden light covered half of the sky, and the 3 giant moons fell below the horizon. She saw Li Yunxin, who had been staring in that direction, turn to look at her and said something that didn't make sense. In the morning on this planet the sky is usually white. Take a guess, why is it golden now? Shinryu paused for a moment. She didn't know why, but she suddenly had a bad premonition. But before this she was full of confidence, thinking that she had the upper hand. In the past her emotions would never change so quickly in front of others. But looking at Li Yunxin's face in front of her, she felt that she couldn't control her emotions. This guy is poisonous. He was always able to easily stir up the emotions of others. Or in layman's terms, afraid of him. Shinryu slowly understood one thing. Every time this person doesn't play by the rules, things won't go well, such as now. He suddenly began to talk of some other irrelevant subject. So she didn't guess. She just frowned and looked to the north. But she couldn't see anything. Of course not. Li Yunxin knocked on his helmet. It's still outside the atmosphere. This is the planet where the interstellar fleet of that world first landed on the surface. Right now, outside the atmosphere, there are 11 giant motherships docked in the planet's orbit. Super. At the same time, there are nearly 600 landing craft preparing to enter the atmosphere. It's also super. The reason why it's golden is because of the light from the giant mothership's waves. Of course, you won't understand even if I tell you. Li Yunxin sighed and stood up. There are still 12 hours before the landing craft will land. It's a spectacular sight. But if I show you, I don't know if it'll be bad for me. So, he said something in a low voice. The surrounding scenery suddenly disappeared, and the secret room returned to its original appearance. There were no decorations, no tables or chairs. The dome, the walls, and the floor were all white. Only many words and thin lines appeared on the snow-white walls. Shinryu didn't know what those things were for, but she realized one thing. Li Yunxin didn't make no progress these days. So I won't show you. The heavy clothes on Li Yunxin also disappeared. He looked at Shinryu seriously. I didn't create this desert because I wanted to escape or because I was in a bad mood. Or let's put it this way. In your eyes, that space just now was a desert, a place to escape. But here what I see is exuberant vitality and hope. Humanity's new home. After 10 hours you'll see the colony ship landing. After 10 days a huge city will appear. When I saw this and heard what you said, I suddenly felt very emotional. Li Yunxin sighed softly. I do have a sense of confinement. But seeing this scene I realized that here on this planet the great demons and cultivators are said to be omnipotent, but what can they actually do? In the end they can't escape the shackles of this planet. You came to me and told me a bunch of people's hearts and schemes. You said their schemes are so and so. In the end it's still the fight between people. But in another place a long time ago, there was another group of people whose world was already a brilliant sea of stars. They may also be fighting. But not only with people but also with the sky, with the entire vast universe, extremely harsh and strange universe environment. The scene I saw just now was just like that. Only with great ambition and sacrifice can the sun and moon change the sky. Li Yunxin sighed helplessly. That's why I suddenly felt a little annoyed. Just now, I felt that I had just experienced a little sense of expansion and sublimation, and then you came to me and said a bunch of nonsense to pull me back here. It's very boring. The biggest contradiction between us is actually not some power struggle. It's the contradiction between your group's growing demand for low-end goals in this world and my increasingly broadened vision. At this point he paused for a moment. Shinryu's face was solemn. What do you want to say? That is, I don't want to continue playing with you. Li Yunxin raised his hand and pointed to the wall. These days I have broken through the 6th level of control command and soon I will get what I want. If everything goes well, things will be done in 3 days. Even if there are some twists and turns, it will not take more than 5 days. Divine Lord, can you settle things on your side in 3 to 5 days? If you can't, don't blame me for coming out of this room. Shinryu stared at him for a while. You're an alarmist. It's up to you to believe it or not. Because you know that Lu Gongzan is coming here, so you're being an alarmist. You want us to be afraid and delay for a few days. Lu Gongzan? Li Yunxin smiled. I'm not worried about him at all. He's a person with good luck, good judgment, and a brain. If they really heard some rumors about me and made a stupid decision to come here, there were only 2 possibilities. But he is not Lu Gongzan. He's playing with you. To be honest, your IQ is not only not enough to fight with me, but also not enough to fight with him. Shinryu was about to speak, but Li Yunxin immediately interrupted her. You don't believe me? Then let me ask you. Have they caught him yet? Have they found him yet? The lifeless immortal sect is so powerful. Could it be that they can't even find a Lu Gongzan who is rushing to the East Sea? If that's the case, Ha Divine Lord, I'll give you two possibilities. Li Yunxin revealed an evil smile. One possibility is that your IQ is low and you've really been played by him. The other possibility is that your IQ is low and you've been played by the lifeless immortal sect. If the lifeless immortal sect can cooperate with you to sell me out, why can't they really cooperate with me to sell you out? Actually, their people have long been together. The people from the lifeless immortal sect found a reason to fool you and then went to inform old Lu. Tell me which one is the truth. Shinryu was stunned for a moment and her face changed. Chapter 741. Li Yunxin shook his head sympathetically. Looking at your expression, did someone from the lifeless immortal sect really go to contact Lu Gongzan? Shinryu took a deep breath and calmed herself down. It's useless to talk to you. Your ability to confuse the mind is one of the best in the world. Her face didn't look good and her voice was very low. You said that you will succeed in 3 days or 5 days at most. What a coincidence! If I want to succeed, I also need these days. Then let's take a look. Let's see who will die. Shinryu's tone was stern, but she couldn't help but glance at the wall a few times. When I succeed, no matter what conspiracy you have, it will be in vain. After saying these words as if she was afraid that Li Yunxin would say something annoying again, Shinryu's figure flickered slightly and soon disappeared. The expression on Li Yunxin's face didn't change, as if the arrival of Shinryu was just a breeze visiting. He reached out and pointed a few times on the wall, and the surrounding environment returned to the previous desolate and lonely planet. At the Stormy Waves Inn in Donghai Town, Lu Gongzan met with several messengers. Like the previous old painter, they brought the same news. Someone was actively trying to contact him, intending to meet him. After thinking for a whole day, Lu Gongzan went out the next day. It was noon, the sun was hanging high, but it wasn't hot enough. He had sent some messages through his own channels, asking the other party to meet at the beach near Whitewater Town. But he instinctively felt that things shouldn't be so simple and there should be many twists and turns. So when he went out, he prepared for safety, planning to deal with any accidents. The appointed place was next to a reef. It was difficult for large ships to sail in, and it was dangerous for small ships to sail nearby. Because less than a meter of water was full of sharp blade-like reef everywhere, so it was named Knife Beach. He stood on a reef on the shore and waited for about a quarter of an hour, but still didn't see anyone. The waves washed against the reef, making a monotonous background sound. The seawater under the reef was very clean, like flowing glass. Lu Gongzan made a hand seal and waited for a while. He couldn't help but wonder how Li Yunxin would deal with such a situation if he were here. He believed that he was part of Brother Xian's plan, even though they hadn't had the chance to contact each other since they parted ways. But what he had done on land these days was also inextricably linked to Li Yunxin. Li Yunxin had expected that after the destruction of the Daoist sect of wonders, great demons from all over the world would come into being. He had also expected the current chaos in the world. When he went to Chengdu, he casually made a few idle moves and helped Prince Rong. Now Prince Rong, no Emperor Rong Ingjuran, had already become a powerful figure with his help. He established the Second Saint Church, hoping that more and more people's power of will would be of help to what his brother Xian was doing. In a sense, they were still in contact through this method. But when he did those things such as subduing the Black Knife and going to Chengdu, was it intentional or unintentional? If it was unintentional, then he was really lucky. Now someone wanted to see him. Lu Gongzan felt that if Brother Xian could predict the current situation of the world, he should also be able to predict the contact between him and the other party. So, what role did he want him to play? What should he do? But as soon as he thought of this, Lu Gongzan understood. Li Yunxin was not a person who easily trusted others. Since he trusted him so much, it meant that he was very confident in his vision, ideas, and ability to adapt. Since that was the case, maybe he could help him if he acted according to his own ideas. He thought about these things and looked up at the sea a few times but still saw nothing. So he looked down at the water beside the reef. After looking for a few more times, he suddenly sighed and shook his head. I am proud that I am already in the realm of profound mastery, and have received the teachings of Dragon King. My cultivation is not the best in the world, but it is still rare. I didn't expect that I couldn't see through you. It seems that the people from the lifeless immortal sect in the sea are really clever. He said while slightly frowning. Sir, show yourself. Suddenly, there was a ripple on the water surface. The surrounding scenery darkened and then brightened. However, Lu Gongzan could already sense that a certain barrier had been activated. He and the nearby sea and sky were wrapped inside. A figure rose from the shallow water beside the reef under his feet and condensed into a figure. The person who came was also wearing a Daoist robe. He was carried by the wave and jumped onto the reef. He was only 2 or 3 steps away from Lu Gongzan. Lu Gongzan's face was like water, but the person smiled and bowed. Tong Tian Dragon King, please don't blame me. I had no choice. When I meet with Dragon King, there are some things that can't be heard by others. So I set up a restriction to let Dragon King have a look first. If Dragon King can't see through it immediately, it means that this restriction can be used. He bowed again. I am Qin Fengzi, a necromancer from the lifeless immortal sect. Lu Gongzan was slightly startled. He realized that the person who came was different from what he thought. He had heard some things about the sea monsters from Lu Baishui at the Stormy Waves Inn, and had seen many land monsters. So in his opinion, even if the demons learned the ways of humans, there were still many differences. The tyrannical nature in their hearts was always different from that of humans. But looking at the person in front of him, the way he talked and acted was no different from humans, and his attitude was also very kind. It was strange. But the more it was so, the more he felt that something was wrong, and he became even more vigilant. So he looked at Qin Fengzi and said in a deep voice, "You are looking for me." Yes. Qin Fengzi also looked at him. "I came here to tell Tongtian Dragon King something. Li Yunxin was tricked by the 10,000-year ancestor, and is now trapped on Dragon Island. Long De Qinjun was also tricked by Shinryu and is also trapped there. Shinryu is using a secret technique to refine Qinjun. Once it succeeds, he can return to Taishang." Lu Gongzan raised his hand and interrupted him. "What do you mean?" Qin Fengzi was startled. "What does Dragon King mean?" "You are from the lifeless immortal sect. You came to see me but immediately told me. If what you said is true, what do you want to do? If not and you want to lie to me, I will see through you." Lu Gongzan frowned. "If you say you want to be honest, the tempo is a bit too fast." Tempo. Qin Fengzi repeated these 2 words, then sighed. "All right, I was rude. But I have been with Li Yunxin for a few days. I thought that the Lu Gongzan that he admires would have the same temperament as him, and it would be easier to talk to him. I didn't expect you to be wary." Hearing this, Lu Gongzan's expression softened. He smiled. "There is no one else in the world who has the same temperament as Li Yunxin. But for you to say this, it means that you have interacted with him before. I have heard about what happened on the sea. I want to hear it from you so that I can make a better judgment." Qin Fengzi knew what he meant and told him everything he had seen and heard in the past few days. What Lu Gongzan knew was gathered from various sources. It was inevitable that there would be a lot of rumors, some of which were even slightly exaggerated. Now that he heard Qin Fengzi tell the whole story, he finally understood how exciting the scene was. From Qin Fengzi's words, he had also heard many details about Li Yunxin that no one else could fabricate. So his heart slowly calmed down. Now that he looked at Qin Fengzi again, he felt that something was different. This siren was also interesting. It was as if he yearned for Li Yunxin's heroic spirit and quick-wittedness, so he had a good impression of this enemy. Lu Gongzan laughed in his heart. He only saw the heroic side of Li Yunxin, but he didn't see the other side. If he did, he wouldn't feel that Li Yunxin's current situation is extremely dangerous. Qin Fengzi told him everything, then said, "Does Dragon King believe me now?" Lu Gongzan thought for a moment. "You don't need to call me Dragon King. In this world there is only one person worthy of the name Dragon King. You can call me Mr. Lu. After listening to what you said, I can confirm that you have some relationship with Dragon King. But there is another question that I have to ask. The same old question. No matter how much you admire Dragon King, you are still a member of the lifeless immortal sect. Why are you on our side?" Qin Fengzi sighed. "Speaking of this, I have to talk about another matter. It is also what I am worried about being heard by others." After saying that, he made a few more hand seals. Light flashed around them, the seal seemed to have become stronger. After doing all this, he lowered his voice. "What I said to you just now was what the lifeless immortal sect wanted me to say. What I want to tell you now is what I want to tell you. Li Yunxin is currently on Dragon Island. He found a way to protect himself. The ancestor can't do anything to him, the Shinryu can't do anything to him. So they decided to lure him out. That's why you heard a lot of news, that he is in trouble, in danger. We released this news to lure some people into our trap. Our main target is you. Once you fall into our hands, we can use it to threaten Li Yunxin. We believe that Li Yunxin will change his original plan because of your life. You are the bait. Lu Gongzan thought for a while. Then, according to the original plan, you were the one who said those words to me. I feel that you are indeed an anomaly. Did you really leak information to me just to lure me into a trap? Yes. Since you are on good terms with Li Yunxin, that way of speaking should be very effective. Lu Gongzan laughed. You think too highly of me. I am just an ordinary person. Then what are you going to say next? What I am going to say next is something related to the lifeless immortal sect. But let's put it aside for now. Qin Fengzi hesitated. Can I ask a question that I want to ask? Chapter 742. Lu Gongzan smiled. Go ahead. Why do you follow Li Yunxin so wholeheartedly? Qin Fengzi frowned slightly. To be honest, I have interacted with him for some time now. I've been with him for a few days, and he can indeed be called an ambitious and ruthless person. But this kind of person, you may admire him from afar, but once you become his follower, your days may not be good. What is your purpose in following him? Longevity or the pursuit of Daoist techniques? Lu Gongzan looked at him in surprise. He didn't expect this kind of question. But after thinking for a while, he still said, I can answer your question. But there is one thing. If after this conversation before you leave I feel that you are not a trustworthy person, I will kill you and not let you leak this information to others. Can you accept this kind of risk? Qin Fengzi answered without hesitation, yes. Lu Gongzan didn't say anything else. Then I can tell you. When I first followed him, it was indeed for longevity, Daoist techniques. These things are very practical, no one can refuse. For example, when you joined the lifeless immortal sect to learn and cultivate, it must have been for these things. Just like a person who is about to die of hunger or thirst. What he wants is only to fill his stomach. But later on, like now, I have some cultivation, I can go anywhere in the world. But I still don't have any other thoughts, it is because of that person. Qin Fengzi frowned. Person? Lu Gongzan smiled. Don't misunderstand. Li Yunxin is not a perfect saint. Even when it comes to things like a person's conscience, he might be even worse than me. But at least from a certain point of view, he is a person who looks the same inside and out. Qin Fengzi's frown deepened. He felt that what Lu Gongzan said and what he knew were two completely different people. When he was with Li Yunxin, it was very difficult to judge which words were true and which were false. But now Lu Gongzan said that he was the same as he appeared. Lu Gongzan seemed to see through his doubts and smiled again. For example, after the Battle of Cloud Mountain, I asked him why the celestial sect was destroyed. Because at that time I knew that it would be an era of suffering for the people. Evil creatures would rise up in the world and the Midland would be flooded with blood. Although I don't have the heart to worry about the world, if I was one of the main culprits who caused that kind of situation, I wouldn't feel good about it. It was snowing. He told me that he did all those things for the sake of all human beings in the world. He said that the celestial sect of wonders has controlled the human world for tens of thousands of years and raised humans like livestock. Although it was comfortable, it was like raising livestock. It wasn't a good thing. If he was trapped for too long, he wouldn't be able to fly or run. Slowly they would perish in the end. He had thrown the world into chaos in order to teach people how to be their own masters in the midst of blood and fire. Only then would things get better and better. This is called no construction without destruction. Qin Fengzi exclaimed out in shock. Does he really have the heart to do that? Lu Gongzan laughed and said, when he said those words I thought it was true. But later I found out that it wasn't true. He just didn't want me to feel guilty, or in other words, he said those words to make me feel better. So you said that he was as honest as he appeared? Because I think in order to see how a person is, apart from listening to what he said, what's more important is what he did. Lu Gongzan sighed slightly. What he said about the celestial sect of wonders was true. I agree with him. It's also true that he destroyed the celestial sect of wonders, and that was his action. Although his purpose might not be that, and it might even be something that he did conveniently to achieve his real purpose, the fact is right there. There is no celestial sect of wonders in the world, but there are still evil creatures. there are evil creatures and human beings have to suffer as well. Therefore he went to the Dragon Island and killed the leader of all evil creatures in the world. No matter what he was going to do in Shinryu, once he succeeded, the power of the evil creatures would be greatly reduced. He also left some people in Midland. I helped Emperor Rome conquer cities and territories not for anything else. It was to build the kind of paradise that he said. This is what I meant by as honest as he appeared. He did almost everything that he said. In this case, why should I care about his real purpose? He didn't care about anything in this world. What he was after was something that I couldn't understand. Another example is a pond that is about to dry up. In the pond there are many fish that are dying of thirst. At this time, those powerful beings are fighting, and deep ditches have been left on the ground, connecting the pond and the river. The fish in the pond can survive. Do the fish care about whether the real purpose of those powerful beings is to save them or not? Qin Fengzi thought for a while, then shook his head and said, "But what's the difference between this and someone who appears to be different?" Lu Gongzan laughed out loud. "Isn't the difference obvious? Someone who appears to be different, saying that he wants to benefit the people of the world, but more often than not he acts like an ancestor and enslaves everyone. But when he does things, he will at least consider something else. If he can do it conveniently, he will do it conveniently. This kind of heart is the rarest. Now he can compete with Shinryu and the Rock King. But had he ever asked for anything from this world? Had he ever asked for anything? Not at all. Because he doesn't care about the world. But because he doesn't care, he is the greatest blessing in the world." After saying this, Lu Gongzan looked at Qin Fengzi and pondered. After a while he said, "You asked me why I followed him. You probably have some unanswered questions in your heart. Since I am being honest with you, you can also tell me, what did the headmaster of your lifeless immortal sect do to make you disappointed?" Qin Fengzi was shocked. I guessed it when you asked me why I followed Li Yunxin." Lu Gongzan smiled. "Otherwise, what reason do you have to say those things to me?" "AI. Qin Fengzi sighed. "I do have this question. Do you know that the headmaster of my lifeless immortal sect was originally from the Land Xian sect? This is the first time I've heard of this." "He was originally a cultivator from the land." Qin Fengzi sighed again. "Later on he went to the sea and established the lifeless immortal sect, which has been passed down for tens of thousands of years. The ancestor has always warned us that the Land Xian sect cultivates the evil path, while we cultivate the righteous path. We accumulate our forces in the sea and build up our strength so that one day we can attack the land and promote the orthodox Xian sect. After I entered the sect, I have always treated this as my duty. But gradually many people and I started to have doubts about one thing." Qin Fengzi hesitated and said in a low voice, "The immortal sect has set up a large array in the vast sea and small arrays everywhere. When demons die in the sea, their souls are absorbed by the small arrays and refined into the large array. And in that large array, an ancient devil from the netherworld is sealed." Lu Gongzan thought for a while. "The problem lies with the ancient devil?" "Yes. The ancestor said that we could have attacked the land a long time ago. But the reason why we didn't do so was because of the ancient devil. Once the ancient devil awakens, it will bring a great calamity to the world. For the sake of the world, we must first refine and suppress the ancient devil." However, more and more people realized that the ancient devil wasn't that important. The large array in the vast sea didn't seem to want to suppress and refine the ancient devil into nothingness. But as time passed, the ancient devil became stronger and stronger. And recently, the ancestor sent some of us who had doubts to die. We secretly guessed that the ancestor refined the ancient devil." He hesitated for a while and seemed to spend a lot of courage before saying, "For his own use." Lu Gongzan smiled. "I understand. Your ancestor's words are always dignified, saying that it's for the sake of the world. You were influenced by what you saw and heard and almost believed it. But in the end it's for his own benefit. That's why you suspect that there's more to it than meets the eye." Qin Fengzi was about to speak, but Lu Gongzan smiled. "So the ancestor is different from Li Yunxin. He rarely said such things when he was doing things. Instead, it makes people think that he's doing it for his own benefit. But in the end he will give others a lot of benefits. But because of that you put your hopes on Li Yunxin? It doesn't make sense." "I didn't put my hopes on him, I just wanted to change. I'm just a pawn, I came here to take a look." Qin Fengzi looked at Lu Gongzan. "To see what kind of people are around Li Yunxin. And to think about what kind of person Li Yunxin is. I understand. Lu Gongzan thought for a while. I've seen the ancient devil under the cloud mountain. It's a scary thing. To the demons it might be even scarier. Because I've seen it suck the souls of demons, but it has no interest in humans. Your ancestor was originally a human, but you are demons. Thinking about this, you can kill people. Why did he only recruit demons as his disciples in the sea? But if you think about it again, your ancestor refining the ancient devil for his own benefit isn't the scariest thing. If he and Brother Xing, Li Yunxin are the same kind of people, then when he does this he can really fulfill his initial promise to you, and it can be considered to be the same inside and out to a certain extent. But the scariest thing is that he isn't. He doesn't care about the world, he only cares about himself. He refined the ancient devil for his own use, but he won't revive the profound gate. He'll even use you for his own use. You and the others in the gate only have doubts in your heart. You don't know what your ancestor will do and what you should do, so you can only try to find a way out and test me. Lu Gongzan sighed sympathetically. This situation is the most dangerous. Then I can't help you right now, nor can I help you. Lu Gongzan smiled and shook his head. You have to save yourselves. Or rather, you have to make a big gamble. Chapter 743. Gamble. Qin Fengzi frowned. Gamble on what? Let's take a gamble and see if someone else will come to help you or answer your questions. Qin Fengzi was startled. He didn't know if Lu Gongzan's words had any deeper meaning. He said that he couldn't help them, but he wanted them to gamble. What was he hinting at? While Qin Fengzi was startled, Lu Gongzan was thinking about this person. Before the meeting, Lu Gongzan thought that the conversation would be extremely difficult. He didn't expect the honesty of this person to be out of his expectations. Almost from the moment they met, he confessed everything. Now that he heard something else, Lu Gongzan gradually had an impression of Qin Fengzi. And because of this impression he felt that this person was interesting. No wonder Li Yunxin didn't kill him. When he and Li Yunxin drank under the moon and chatted, Li Yunxin would occasionally mention things from his world. He said that in his world, there was a certain type of people that everyone called idiots. These idiots didn't mean that they lacked intelligence. On the contrary, most of them belonged to the group with high intelligence in that world. And the reason why others thought they were idiots was because they didn't understand the ways of the world and were too idealistic. To put it nicely, they were simple. This was something Lu Gongzan mentioned when they were talking about the crazy people in the world. Li Yunxin continued and said that there were similar people in his world. He had even thought about it briefly before. From what he saw, when people lived in groups, they mostly followed the law of the jungle. They lacked morality and followed the law of the jungle. Because of this, a set of rules in society was developed. This kind of social rules was suitable for social life, and the core idea was self-interest and the law of the jungle. The deceit, flattery, disregard of rules, even murder and robbery, corruption seen in the world were almost all caused by that set of social rules. But as people became more and more civilized and society became more and more civilized, another set of rules was born from this set of social rules. It could be called the law of morality. Along with the law of morality, more and more advanced civilizations also appeared. Therefore, a small part of the elite groups began to receive this kind of education about morality and civilization. The scholars in the Midland, the scholars in Li Yunxin's world, received exactly this kind of education. This kind of moral law that emerged from the mud of the social law was essentially an ideal state that had yet to be realized. Many people, young people or children, receive this kind of education without being exposed to enough of the social rules. The very idea of this education was to make men better and better, to replace the laws of society and to achieve an ideal state. However, after being instilled with this set of rules, many people really formed a set of moral values based on books or beliefs in their hearts. When they came to society, they found that the moral values they had been educated to establish were essentially in conflict with some social laws in social life. The students read the books of the sages and understood the thoughts of the sages. They felt that people should be upright and outspoken, and hate evil as if it were their own enemies. In a sense, this kind of civilized education was very successful. But when he entered society, he found that he had no choice but to compromise, to save the country in a roundabout way, and to tolerate. Some people felt that there was a huge conflict between their ideals and reality, and they felt pain because of this. Therefore, the saying "it's rare to be stupid" came into being. Some people compromised, abandoned the law of morality and completely accepted the laws of society. Some people recognized the reality and while sticking to their own moral values, they had no choice but to do things according to the laws of society. These two kinds of people might not have a good life, but at least they wouldn't have a bad life. However, there was another kind of people who stuck to the moral values in their hearts and refused to accept or compromise with another kind of law. This kind of people became what people called idiots. Perhaps it was because changing and accepting was an extremely painful thing, so they didn't want to do it. In fact, this was also a kind of cowardice and avoidance. Or perhaps it was because they were too stubborn to their beliefs and were willing to use their whole lives to fulfill their beliefs. These people could be called warriors or ideal martyrs. And this Xianxia was actually a bit like that kind of idiot. Although he was a demon, he wasn't a child, and in the lifeless immortal sect, there were many classes and relationships. But in those sects that mainly focused on cultivation, the environment was relatively simple. It was similar to a very large academy, or what Li Yunxin called a school. In that kind of environment he was instilled with some kind of great, bright and correct belief for a long time, and gradually he became a firm believer in it. From this point, it could be said that the 10,000-year-old ancestor's education was very successful. But because of this success, when Xianxia found out that reality and his beliefs greatly conflicted, he became quite conflicted and painful. The intense emotions brought about by this conflict could even make him disloyal to the Immortal sect, and he tried to seek answers from a stranger and unfamiliar power. Lu Gongzan could understand this kind of pain. A person's thoughts were the most mysterious thing. When a person didn't want to do something, there was no power that could make him do it. Even if he used a sacred art, it was essentially to make him willing to do it. Even if this willing was fake at the time. How many people like Xianxia were there in the lifeless immortal sect? The 10,000-year-old ancestor had been operating in the ocean for tens of thousands of years. He shouldn't have never thought of this kind of situation. Then, the speculation that he had made before might indeed be true. When Lu Gongzan thought of this, his expression suddenly changed. But it wasn't because of Xianxia, but because of the sound of a zither. The sound of a zither lingering in the air came from an unknown place. The two of them were talking on a reef by the sea. Although the sea was relatively calm, there were still the sounds of waves. The sound of waves could cover up the voices of ordinary people, and because the two of them were cultivators, they could hear each other's words clearly. But now, the sound of the zither seemed to directly enter their minds. It was even clearer than the two of them talking. Xianxia's expression changed. Obviously he also heard this sound. Just as he was about to speak, Lu Gongzan waved his hand and struck towards the west, shouting, "Who is it? Viki." The palm strike from the mysterious realm directly tore apart the restriction set by Xianxia, and with a weng sound, it pierced through the air, causing the air to let out a terrifying screech. But the power of the palm suddenly dissipated 3 feet away. There was no loud sound, no strange phenomenon. Like a clay ox disappearing into the sea, it disappeared without a sound. Just as Lu Gongzan was about to fly over and attack again, a figure slowly appeared in the air. If it was any ordinary person, Lu Gongzan wouldn't have held back. He had to first fight a few times, figure out the situation and capture him. But when he saw this figure, he was stunned. Because the person who came was actually an extremely beautiful woman, standing on a small white jade boat. Judging from how she had easily neutralized his attack just now, this woman's cultivation was one of the highest in the current world. There were many strong cultivators in the world, but there weren't many such beautiful female cultivators. A few names flashed through Lu Gongzan's mind and he quickly caught one. So he slowly retracted his hand, looked at the woman and smiled. "I was wondering who it was. So it's the owner of Southern Wood Residence." The woman smiled. "You actually recognized me. I knew you would come. But I didn't expect you to come so quickly." As Lu Gongzan said this, he turned to look at Xianxia. "Just now I said that we would have a bet, that there would be someone who would clear up your doubts. Look, that person is here." Xianxia frowned, showing a suspicious expression. And his words seemed to have surprised Daoist Xingshui. "You knew I would come?" She shook her head slightly. "You have received the teachings of Li Yunxin. Your ability to deliberately mystify things is comparable to his." Lu Gongzan didn't care. "Please come forward. I am not deliberately mystifying things. The owner of Southern Wood Residence is well informed. You should know that I used the name of Li Yunxin to create a nondescript painting path in the world. Many of them are my messengers, but most of them are lowly Taoist priests. But I also know that Southernwood Residence has been operating in the mortal world for a long time. Many of the people in my painting path should be people of Southernwood Residence. Every piece of information I received should have been seen by the owner of Southernwood Residence. How could the owner of Southernwood Residence not know that this friend of mine asked me to meet here? He smiled again. Since I can receive this information, it means that you are happy to see the current situation, and you are more likely to stand on our side. So I told him that there would be someone to clear up his doubts. Sir, tell me, am I right? After a moment of silence, Daoist Xianxia smiled. You have indeed received the teachings of Li Yunxin. After saying this, her figure suddenly appeared on the reef. The three of them were separated by 3 to 4 steps, as if they were in a tripartite formation. The owner of Southernwood Residence should have heard our conversation just now. Lu Gongzan said, then please tell this friend. How should they solve their current predicament? Daoist Xianxia smiled. His confusion is because he knows too little. There is nothing difficult in the world. What is difficult is just not understanding it clearly enough. Since you have guessed my intention, then let's cut to the chase. I can also be considered to have contributed, so let's talk about some things. These words were said to Lu Gongzan. Then he turned to Qin Fengzi. Do you know the origin of your 10,000-year-old ancestor? Previously, when facing Lu Gongzan, Qin Fengzi was still considered calm. But now that there seemed to be a woman who was stronger than Lu Gongzan and an extremely beautiful woman, Qin Fengzi felt slightly uneasy. He thought for a moment before answering carefully. The ancestor came from the profound sect of the land and was later chased by 2 demons. Daoist Xianxia interrupted him. Do you know why he was chased? Qin Fengzi was stunned again. It was because the 2 demons cultivated the evil tome and the ancestor and the people of Cloud Mountain. Chapter 744. Daoist Xianxia smiled and shook her head. Looks like you really don't know the truth. Then let me tell you. What you lifeless immortal sect people are currently cultivating is the evil tome that your 10,000-year-old ancestor spoke of. This caused Qin Fengzi's eyes to widen as he exclaimed, What? Those 2 demons were originally your 10,000-year-old ancestor's juniors. Your ancestor told you that they were cultivating the evil tome and he told Xian sect about it. That's why they hated him and wanted to kill him. But in reality he saw that the 2 juniors were cultivating the evil tome and their cultivation increased by leaps and bounds, so he couldn't help but beg them. The 2 of them were from the same sect and really taught him. After he cultivated it, he realized that it was actually a treasure tome and wanted to keep it for himself. That's why he called them demons and asked Xian sect to go all out to kill them. I didn't expect the 2 of them to hold back when they taught him the technique. Only when they really fought did he realize how strong the 2 of them were. He went from being surrounded and hunted to being surrounded and hunted. After that, the fact that he was also cultivating the evil tome was exposed in Cloud Mountain and the people of Cloud Mountain didn't want him anymore. So he had no choice but to escape to the sea, and that's how your lifeless immortal sect came to be. Daoist Xianxia smiled again. Otherwise, why do you think he has such a deep hatred for Xian sect on land and wants to get rid of them? This. Qin Fengzi, who was already at a loss because of the conflict of ideas in his mind, became even more at a loss after hearing this explosive inside story. How could it be? Don't be shocked. There's another thing. But your guess on this matter is also correct. The ancient demon that was refined in the vast sea formation was indeed something that your ancestor wanted to use for himself. After refining it, he will possess it. Because only in the weak water can he ensure that his body won't be destroyed. Once he leaves the weak water, he will die. But he still wants to go to the land and become an ancestor. What should he do? Naturally, he wants to get his hands on the ancient demon. The step of refining the ancient demon's consciousness and instincts was completed a long time ago. What you have done all these years. It was to make the ancient demon stronger. When the time is right, your ancestor will possess it and become one with the ancient demon. At that time, almost no one in the world would be able to go against him. 3 guys. Don't you know that those cultivators in Midland hate demons the most? Don't tell me you don't know that the souls of demons, especially the souls of demons with high cultivation bases, are great supplements for the ancient devil's body? Lu Gongzan mentioned this to you before. Now let me tell you, his conjecture is correct. Qin Fengzi was dumbstruck, his teeth chattering loudly. After a long time he finally said, "How could this be? Why not?" The Clearwater Daoist looked at him sympathetically. Her eyes wandered. "It's you guys who haven't thought of this yet. How could it be? Since you knew about it and you said that the old ancestor would be invincible, why didn't you? Why not?" Daoist Qingshui shook his head. "How can things in the world be so simple? It wasn't a brawl between barbarians. The various forces were intertwined, and a slight move in one part could affect the whole. In the past, your lifeless immortal sect formed an alliance with the Dragon King of the Nine Seas and Shinryu, and lived in seclusion on the sea. The Shinryu also had 9 dragon sons on land to control the Celestial Sect. The Celestial Sect was secretly controlled by the Freemasonry. The Freemasonry was also the enemy of Mu Nanju. In such a situation, whoever made a move would become the target of everyone. We had to wait until the world was out of balance and chaos to find an opportunity. We waited for thousands of years, and finally the person who had the ability to stir up the world appeared." She said this while looking at Lu Gongzan. "Li Yunxin. That's why I'm willing to ask you to meet him. I'm also willing to help you save Li Yunxin. Once Li Yunxin gets out, the old ancestor will lose the help of Shinryu. Now that he's one of the top figures in the world, the old ancestor might not be able to win against him." From what she said, it seemed like she was doing it for the sake of the people and had no selfish motives. But Lu Gongzan was aware of the relationship between Li Yunxin and Mu Nanju. Naturally, he wouldn't have such an illusion, and he wouldn't ask, "Then what do you want?" He wasn't an idiot like Qin Fengzi. He only said, "Then what do you think they should do next?" Qin Fengzi, who was at a loss, seemed to be completely at the mercy of the two. Daoist Qingshui said softly, "Although the old ancestor has ulterior motives, I see that your friend is a pure and kind person. It's very difficult for such a person to raise his sword against his fellow sect members and teachers. But everyone knows the principle of self-preservation. Doing other things for self-preservation isn't considered a loss of morality." She turned to look at Qin Fengzi. "The old ancestor taught you and gave you a new lease of life. But the two of us are outsiders to you. Listening to the words of two outsiders and blindly following them without seeking proof is a disgrace to the sect. I have a compromise here. Do you want to hear it?" Daoist Qingshui used her identity as the owner of Mu Nanju to ask for his opinion softly, and to think from his point of view, it was indeed flattering. Now that things had come to this, Qin Fengzi had no reason to refuse. He said softly, "I'm willing to listen to your advice. Bring us to the ocean." Daoist Qingshui said, "I have a way for you to not be noticed. Once we're on the ocean, we'll observe the changes. Lu Gongzan and I want to save Li Yunxin, so we won't start a fight with the lifeless immortal sect. When Li Yunxin escapes, if the old ancestor really does something that doesn't match his words, we'll hold him back. At that time, you people from the celestial sect will see his true colors, and you won't just sit and wait for death. With this, we can turn the tide and not let things develop in the worst direction." Qin Fengzi's face turned pale and he thought for a long time. Daoist Qingshui's words sounded very reasonable. But in reality he was inviting a wolf into the house. After a long time he said, "But there's still Shinryu. I'm going for Shinryu." Daoist Qingshui's words were very direct. "I have a personal grudge with Shinryu. I must get rid of her. If your lifeless immortal sect is fine, you can sit and watch me fight with Shinryu. You've been operating on the ocean for many years, so you don't have to worry about anything. So, I need this time. Shinryu is being held back by Li Yunxin, and the lifeless immortal sect's old ancestor is busy with his own matters. Only then can I use this opportunity to go to the ocean to solve my problem. If it was any other time, this would definitely not be possible. But if it's like this..." She looked at Qin Fengzi and didn't speak. Lu Gongzan finished for her. "If it's like this, if we're wrong about your old ancestor, you'll be the sinner of the celestial sect. Are you willing to take this risk?" I can't make the decision." Qin Fengzi said softly, "I still need. Then go back and ask someone who can make the decision," Daoist Qingshui said. After she said that, she and Lu Gongzan didn't say anything else. Qin Fengzi knew that these two experts have said everything they need to say, so he could only bid farewell and leave. The development of the situation was out of his expectations. When he spoke to Daoist Zai in Penglai Island, he understood that he was sent to test Lu Gongzan's intentions, and at the same time to warn Lu Gongzan not to fall into the trap easily. Then they would be able to take the initiative and see if they should help Li Yunxin, or continue to trust the old ancestor and work for the celestial sect. Unexpectedly, Lu Gongzan's cultivation was far above his. Not long after, he was captured by the other party. Then came the owner of Southern Wuju. Lifeless Immortal sect had informants on land, so he naturally knew what kind of person the owner of Southern Wuju was. This was also the first time he saw the owner's face. At this time he didn't even have the slightest bit of confidence. It turned out that from the beginning, Lu Gongzan didn't have the possibility of falling into the trap, and seemed to have reached some kind of tacit understanding with the owner of Southern Wuju. He was at his wits' end and could only return to Penglai Island to listen to what Daoist Zai had to say. After Qin Fengzi's figure slowly disappeared, Daoist Qingshui looked at Lu Gongzan and said softly, "When you were in Rong Kingdom, you killed all the people of Southern Wuju who were close to Emperor Rong." Lu Gongzan shook his head. "I just sent them out. Not a single life was harmed. This method of destroying the bridge after crossing the river is passed down from Li Yunxin. You are exaggerating. We are just using each other. Brother Xin's biological father is with you and he's also using him." "You mean Li Chunfeng?" Daoist Qingshui thought for a while. "Like father like son." "Oh." Lu Gongzan laughed. "Isn't Li Chunfeng your right-hand man?" Whenever Brother Xin mentioned this, he would always feel indignant. "Humph. He is already hiding somewhere." Daoist Qingshui frowned slightly. "He is no longer a member of Southern Wuju. I didn't expect the person beside me to have ulterior motives." Lu Gongzan was startled. But somehow he was a little happy, even though he didn't know the inside story. But he felt that this at least meant. Was Li Chunfeng different from what Brother Xin had guessed? This might be a good thing. For Brother Xin. He didn't mention this matter anymore. He said calmly, "What will you do next?" "It's simple. We will go to Penglai with Qin Fengzi, then go to Dragon Island from Penglai." Daoist Qingshui said seriously, "Li Yunxin is very capable. He just needs an opportunity to turn the situation around. We will go and turn the situation around and he will be able to escape. Once he escapes, he will first deal with Shinryu. You should know that I have no ill intentions towards him. All the misunderstandings in the past are because he is too scheming and doesn't trust others easily. But at that time he will understand my sincerity. We will work together to deal with Shinryu and then I can leave. I will not interfere with the rest of the matter." "Your words seem to be too certain." Lu Gongzan frowned. "What if the person behind Qin Fengzi doesn't allow it?" Daoist Qingshui smiled. "He won't. The person behind Qin Fengzi is Zai Zhenren." She looked at Lu Gongzan. "He is also a member of Southern Wuju." Chapter 745. After a while, Lu Gongzan smiled and sighed. "Your association is really resourceful. You're everywhere. It's as if the world is filled with your people. But there aren't many who can be used." Daoist Qingshui looked at him. "It's Li Yunxin's good fortune to have you. If you treat people with sincerity, there will naturally be people willing to work for you." Lu Gongzan shook his head slightly. "He and I are just kindred spirits. But the owner of Southern Wuju is a respected leader. I'm afraid it's difficult to be sincere. No one will believe your sincerity. This isn't your fault." When he said this, he was actually quietly observing the expression of the owner of Southern Wuju, because he realized something was wrong with the current situation. When Li Yunxin was on land, the owner of Southern Wuju repeatedly expressed her goodwill to him, but she never showed up. At that time, Lu Gongzan thought that the owner had something difficult to say, like Shinryu, who wanted to maintain a sense of mystery and deterrence, so she didn't show up. But now that he saw her, he knew that her methods were brilliant. Even with his current realm, he couldn't see what kind of magical power she used to counter his palm. This meant that his previous guess was not valid. However, she came to see him. And when they were talking, the owner of Southern Wuju showed considerable attention and respect to him. Lu Gongzan thought that he could rule out the possibility that the owner wanted to rope him in and use him. Because everyone knew about his friendship with Li Yunxin. It was impossible for him to turn to someone else. With the owner's vision, it was impossible for her to think of this. Then he could think of another possibility, which was that she wanted to change Li Yunxin's impression of her through him. Brother Xin would take his words to heart. If he could put in a few good words, or even just maintain a neutral attitude during the communication, it would cause a subtle change in Li Yunxin's attitude. But what kind of person was the owner of Southern Wuju? To her, the emperors of the mortal world were like ants. He had only attained Dao for little more than a year, and all he had was his cultivation and his close relationship with Li Yunxin. How could someone like her condescend to see him in person? It was just like how Emperor Li treated a craftsman in the marketplace as an equal. This meant that what Li Yunxin was doing now was extremely important to her. Perhaps to her, the matter had reached the most crucial step. There was other evidence for this. She suggested asking Qin Fengzi to take them to Penglai. When he heard this, Lu Gongzhan's heart skipped a beat. Even with his current identity, he was not willing to ask a low-level necromancer to take him to Penglai. For an expert, this kind of behavior was really hard to accept. It was just like how a human emperor would find it difficult to disguise himself as a beggar to avoid trouble, unless it was absolutely necessary. The owner of Southwood Lodge, at a crucial moment, had to go to Shinryu because he had no other choice. For what? With Lu Gongzhan's current knowledge, he could only guess that it was for power. What else could a powerful existence like her do? She wanted the power of Shinryu? But how? How did she get involved with Shinryu? Wasn't Southwood Lodge's goal always the Freemasonry? Therefore, he used an overly lecturing tone and told her, "This is not your fault." She should have shown obvious displeasure. But the Daoist Xianxia smiled. "You have a point." Then she looked at Lu Gongzhan again. "Compared to Li Chunfeng, you look more like Li Yunxin's father." The Daoist Xianxia's answer was the same as Lu Gongzhan's expectation. She was not displeased, instead she wanted to close the distance between them. For someone of her status to say something like that, it was almost like flattery. If only Brother Xian was here. He screamed in his heart he would definitely be able to guess what this woman wanted. But if he had to guess, the only conclusion he could come up with was, this woman had a strong motive. What she said to Qin Fengzi was not fake. She wanted to do something with Shinryu, and her attitude was extremely unfriendly. She could be a temporary ally, and help Li Yunxin out of his predicament. She used to think the same way. But Brother Xian rejected her. Now, this idea had to be taken by him. Lu Gongzhan thought for a while and finally said, "We are friends. Then how many people do you have in Lifeless Immortal Gate? What can I do?" The Daoist Xianxia smiled. "Not many, but enough. We will wait here for Qin Fengzi's news. I'm guessing it won't take a day." "Then let's wait together." The two of them stood on the reef looking at the sea. If they were ordinary people, the atmosphere would be a little awkward. But the two of them were extraordinary people, so they did not care about such things. Since they understood each other's needs, they could actually talk. However, they were only talking about cultivation techniques and divine abilities. The Daoist Xianxia was interested in the dragons, so Lu Gongzhan talked about it. Lu Gongzhan was interested in how Southernwood House operated, so the Daoist Xianxia also talked about it. In between, she only told Lu Gongzhan to be careful and be cautious. When they talked about how to secretly transmit information, Lu Gongzhan praised Southernwood House for being everywhere, and their efficiency was shockingly high. The Daoist Xianxia smiled, looked at him and said, "Not everything is clear. Sometimes, even if we spend a lot of effort to pay attention to someone, they can still escape our control. For example, a few days ago you suddenly disappeared for half a month and no one knew where you went. I couldn't find out. Where did you go?" Lu Gongzhan thought for a while and said, "I met some of Brother Xian's old friends and took care of them. I didn't want them to be involved in these things, so I didn't say. But there's another matter that I want to hear your opinion on." "Please speak." Lu Gongzhan looked at her. "I heard that the Rock King has appeared, but he hasn't done anything. It's like he's plotting something. What do you think?" The Daoist Xianxia shook her head. "I'm not sure." The meaning behind this answer was obviously not, "I'm not sure," but, "I don't want to say," or, "I don't want to talk about it." Lu Gongzhan had some thoughts in his mind. He smiled and didn't ask any more. Qin Fengzi returned to Penglai Island and immediately went to see the Purple Knight enlightened. The two of them set up a barrier, and Qin Fengzi told him everything he saw and waited for the Purple Knight enlightened's decision. What surprised him was that the Purple Knight enlightened only considered for less than 15 minutes. Then he said in the spacious main hall, "Yes." Qin Fengzi was silent for a while and said in a low voice, "But enlightened. So, we might become the sinners of the sect." The Purple Knight enlightened smiled. Under what circumstances would we become the sinners of the sect? Under the situation where the ancestor is selfless and we were worried and wronged him. But at that time the ancestor is still here and the other cultivators of the sect are still here. What kind of person could damage the foundation of the immortal sect? At that time the sect will be unharmed. The ones who will be harmed are us. If that's the case, so what if we are expelled or killed? We are just doing our best for the sect and took a wrong step. There is no such thing as a perfect solution in this world. To do something that others don't dare to do, we must take risks. Mediocre people don't dare to take risks, only brave warriors and those who truly have the sect in their hearts will take risks like we did. If that's the case, even if we become sinners, we will have a clear conscience. Qin Fengzi wanted to say something but stopped. He thought about the Purple Knight Enlightened's words and said in a low voice, "But there is another possibility. The fault lies with the ancestor, not the sect. If they lead outsiders into the sea and even the sect." The Purple Knight Enlightened looked at him for a while. When he saw Qin Fengzi shut his mouth in embarrassment, he sighed. "You can have doubts in your heart and dare to doubt the ancestor's actions. It means you are a courageous person. You have such courage and now you are worried about the sect. It means you are a person with a big heart. But, junior brother, your heart is not big enough. Let me ask you, what has our lifeless immortal sect been pursuing for tens of thousands of years? Apart from immortality, what else is there for us to pursue when we cultivate our divine abilities?" Qin Fengzi answered blankly, "To return to the continent and rebuild the Celestial Gate." Rebuild the Celestial Gate for what? For. Qin Fengzi hesitated. He had an answer in his heart. But in his opinion the answer was too bright. He thought of what he was doing and what he had done in the past, but he didn't dare to say it. Thus, the Purple Knight Enlightened said it on his behalf, for the common people of the world. After saying this, he paced a few steps in the hall. Even that Li Yunxin said on the continent that he wanted to build a paradise. In that paradise, humans and demons coexist in harmony. Don't tell me we didn't think of this? If we were wrong about the ancestor taught us demons on the sea and taught us how to be human, then what was his purpose? Wasn't it also for this matter? Qin Fengzi was stunned. Lu Gongzan also said similar words to him on the reef. He said that Li Yunxin told him that what he was doing was for the future of humans. Now that he heard similar words from the Purple Knight Enlightened, he couldn't help but think, is it because I'm limited by my own realm? My thoughts aren't as lofty as these people? He felt an indescribable sense of shame. The Purple Knight Enlightened said, "Go." He didn't have anything else to say and could only bow and leave the hall. Walking to the steps outside the hall, he looked up at the mountains and palaces of Penglai Island, and the distant sea and sky. He sighed, "Ancestor. We are only doing this for the Celestial Gate. For the common people.